Is this thing on? Oh shit, it is on. Hey! What's up? I forgot that this was on. Goddamn. Holy shit. Yo, folks, I want to say I'm waiting for this guy to call me, but I'm really high right now, so I'm just throwing that out there. Oh, hold up. Oh no, it's happening. Oh,
Yo.
no. Hello? Is this thing on?
Yeah, we're not live yet, though.
Okay. Hold the phone. Hold the phone. Hold the phone. I think I'm okay. How's it going? Is this working?
Good. I don't see you yet.
Okay.
Oh,
right. It's working?
Oh, there we go. Cool. Let me just get this set up so it all looks nice. Are you going to be streaming it too?
Oh, hell yes.
Okay, cool. Are you live right now?
Hell yes.
Okay. Give me 1 second here.
Hell yes. Whoa, I can see myself on your camera. Holy mackerel.
Yeah. Whoa. Let me just edit this.
That's crazy.
All right.
It's crazy.
All right, cool. God. All right. You all ready?
Yeah.
I'll click live on my end and then we'll give it a go.
Sure.
All right, everyone. We are live. Let me just click live here on Rockfin, then we'll be good to go. Hope everyone's having a good day. Andrea is here for the debate, but we'll give it 1 second. I just have to do one last thing, and I'm looking forward to this. Hope everyone is excited. All right. All right. Okay, cool. Looks like we're good to go. Let me unmute you. Okay. Andrea, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good.
If there's anyone in, or for whoever's in chat, just let me know if the audio sounds weird between the two of us. So you are here to debate. Well, I don't want to say what you're debating. Maybe you could just state your case and we'll get into it. We're going to be talking about like Netflix workers and stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm personally okay with debating anything. So if we like get to a conclusion in like 15 minutes or something, we can move on to something else. I don't care. But my thing on the Netflix workers was someone sent me a clip of you calling them parasites or something like that. And I thought that was a little silly. And you're like calling them like PMC or something, and how their protest is not as relevant as other forms of labor strikes going on at the time. And then, so someone sent that to me, and I was like, I disagree with that. My position is I think all strikes are good. I think all labor action is good. I basically support any time a situation occurs, other than the vaccine stuff. I mean, I don't know, but pretty much almost any situation that could occur where a worker is standing up to their boss, I support. So I was also in big support of the Netflix protest and the walkout. I also think that the just whole thing around the Dave Chappelle special and the discourse around it was pretty toxic. I think I think it's debatable whether or not he was making jokes to begin with. I think there was one possible joke in there, and that's a debate we could also have. But I just think that the idea that like the concerns of transgender employees didn't matter, especially after some of them were fired, I find those to be a little ridiculous.
Okay, so do you have like I get, so your argument is, well, okay, first of all, to address what you just said, okay, they're saying you're a little bit loud, I'll turn it down. To address what you first of all said, you said that I said that the Netflix walkout was less important than other strikes and stuff, which I didn't say.
Okay.
Technically. So didn't say that. And then what was the second thing you said?
You called them parasites and PMC?
Yes, I did. So I guess I would question you to start off, if the Netflix workers are not, specifically the organizers of the Netflix walkout are not, and for everyone listening, PMC is professional managerial class. It's kind of been dubbed as like the upper echelons of the middle class, people who have found their way into the owning class either through their positions in the workplace or how they interact with the real working class, or through, their inheritance of, in some cases, exorbitant salaries, stock options, things like that. But I guess I would ask you, if they're not members of the professional managerial class, these organizers of the walkout, which include Ashley Marie Preston, Tara Field, and Jacqueline Moore, amongst others that I haven't seen explicitly named, then what are they?
Well, first of all, I don't place any value whatsoever in the term PMC. I think it's a useless phrase that just kind of divides people that would otherwise be working together. That's my opinion on just the whole term. But I think, again, what really it boils down to is it's a walkout in protest of bringing solidarity between oppressed peoples and bringing the point, to bigger audiences. Like, a lot of people maybe were kind of following the situation with the Dave Chappelle special, and maybe people were upset at him. But then the Netflix walkout kind of crystallized a lot of their positions a little bit, and more people now know about what their demands were, about what they requested, how they feel working in Netflix. And I think that is a win in and of itself.
So I want to get at what you initially said. Why do you feel as though the term professional managerial class, or as it's oftentimes compared to in classical Marxism, as petty bourgeoisie, why do you feel as though you discount that term and that's not it's a nonsensical term and it's just meant to divide people?
Well, I mean, I think the application of a coder or a writer to being PMC is kind of, I don't know. It's strange. If someone's making $200K a year or whatever, I consider them more of an ally than someone who's a CEO at a major company that has billions and billions of dollars of revenue. And again, especially if they're doing things on.
I just want to interrupt there, because being part of the professional managerial class is not just about your salary, or not just about, if you have stock options in the company. It's also about your relationship to other workers in the workplace. So I don't know. I mean, do you see these senior engineers at Netflix as being the equivalent of someone who's flipping patties working minimum wage at McDonald's?
I don't see them as
being
equivalent.
A part of the same class consciousness.
I don't see them as equivalent. I think that anyone going against their boss, for the most part, is probably going to have my support.
So if you don't see them as being equivalent, what do you see them being as?
What do you mean by that?
What class?
What class? I mean, I would say, if we're going to do a class analysis, I would say I am much more interested going after rich people, CEOs, people that have billions and billions of dollars, people that have millions and millions of dollars, than writers and coders that work at Netflix. I mean,
again, it's not necessarily about how much money you have, and they are very wealthy. I mean, even one of the Netflix workers herself, I think it was Tara Field, who was one of the main organizers of the walkout, said that when Biden was elected, I'm able to take a breath now. They said, blah, blah, blah. Not all trans employees are software engineers, and they don't all make the same amount of money as we do. They said, I'm in a position of relative privilege and power even. So I guess what I'm getting at here is that it's not necessarily about how much money you have or how much your salary is, even though Tara Field is in a privileged position and does have power and has a very nice house in San Francisco overlooking the ocean. It's about one's relationship to other workers and how they, operate in the workplace. I mean, how do you define a class? That might be a better place to start off at.
I mean, a class of people that are probably under similar working conditions. Now, if you want to say the PMC in this instance are people that, let's say, get direct orders from corporate and then try to infiltrate the lowest echelon of the workers at that company and try to union bust, for example, yeah, fuck those people. But I don't see that as being the case with the Netflix strike and walkout. I also don't personally care about the organizer's history or whatever. I'm more so interested in what actually caused the walk, because one person can't cause a walkout. There's got to be a lot of people that agree on something for that to happen. So
we'll get to that because it is very important, because the Netflix walkers have been openly hostile to working class people throughout their entire careers. But before we get into that, I think it's important to define class, because that the premise of your argument is that PMC is like a nonsensical term just meant to divide people. So you said that defining class is people who have a shared workplace conditions. Is that a fair analysis of what you just said?
Sure.
Okay, so I define class as those who have a shared common economic interest. They're conscious of those interests, and they engage in collective action which advances those interests. And that's that is the traditional Marxist definition of class, which if you take that and you apply that to the Netflix workers themselves, you can see that, say, a working class person who's striking and challenging capital interests is not the same as Netflix workers who are basically going out on a walkout to manage and patrol the workplace and make it a more amenable situation, minimal workplace for the HR department, which works at the behest of the managers of Netflix.
Okay. Yeah, I don't my thing is now I'm going to get a little bit, philosophical here, but I think about 90% of people, if you talk to them about PMC and all these words and classical Marxism, I think 90% of people are going to look at you and go, huh? I don't really... So that's why I don't place that much emphasis on these terms. I also don't think a class necessarily has to act collectively on their own collective best interest. If that's the definition of class, then I don't think we have classes in this country outside of the billionaire class, because people that are workers typically all hate each other over stupid things such as skin color, gender identity, religion. So a lot of workers and poor people just hate each other and yell at each other all day. For no reason, and that's one of the big problems here. So if class is defined by being collectivist, then we got a lot to work on before we actually have a class going. But again, I disagree that these protests and walkouts were specifically just about making the managerial tier more less stressful or anything. I think they had legitimate purpose and points. I think especially if you look at what trans people have to say about the Dave Chappelle situation with his Netflix special, the workers here that did the walkout really just wanted to use this as a giant PR campaign to just say, hey, trans people matter, and you're allowed to criticize a comedy special. That's okay. I think that really at the end of the day, you're allowed to criticize a comedy special. I think you just made my point. Okay.
There. I mean, I still want to keep debating. But
let's go.
We just started, but you just said that the entire premise of the Netflix walkout was to criticize a comedy special. which, is totally fine. I don't have any problem with criticizing a comedy special. I watched part of it. I didn't think it was funny. But being offended by someone's comedy is it's not a workers' rights issue. It's not the same as a proletarian, collective action to try and get better wages or to try and stop, child labor or something like that. It's very different. And you just, conceded that point in your definition of what the Netflix walkout was all about. But I want to get back to what you said about what the fact that in your eyes, there is no working class, or that there is no class today. If there's no class today, then what do you think about the fact that we're seeing these widespread labor actions across the country from workers who do in fact make up the lowest quantum of labor in the workplace or in the economy?
Okay, well, I'm gonna go back on the one thing real quick though. Is people were fired ostensibly for bizarre reasons. A lot of people online said that they were fired for cause. One was specifically fired for, quote, crashing a meeting where they were uninvited, and then there was an internal investigation and it found out that they actually just were invited and it was a mistake. They shouldn't have been invited, but they did get invited. But they were publicly shit-canned, very conveniently timed, right after they had made a very public thread about Netflix treating trans people differently. And I also think that trans people... I don't know how many trans people you've spoken to, and I'm not trying to say that as a dig, but I speak to a lot of trans people, and as a trans person myself, trans people often have a lot of problems with employment, and so I do think that, I don't think that there should be a juxtaposition between worker issues and identity issues or anything like that. Trans people have a lot...
You just created a juxtaposition. You just said that what the Netflix workers were doing was just criticizing a Netflix special that they did not like.
I said that, yes, that's one of the things that they were doing.
That's what you said. I'm quoting what you said.
In that criticism, they basically just outlined how trans people actually matter, and you shouldn't be bigoted against transgender people or any people, really. And again, one of the big things that spurred this was the wrongful termination of a trans employee. So I do think that those are things that are I think they should be mixed up. And as well, I also, again, on the subject of class, you defined class as collectivizing, right? So yes, I mean, we do have a bigger class consciousness in this country, especially over Striketober, and really over the course of the entire pandemic. You've seen a lot more class consciousness, which is a good thing. It's absolutely a great thing. But at the end of the day, this is still maybe 5 to 10% of America, and we've got a long way to go. If that's the kind of solidarity that we're trying to build.
5% of America?
People that are unionizing and striking and actually trying to collectivize and demand better things.
We have record low unionization in the United States right now, but that does not mean that we have 5 to 10% of the American public that's only a part of the working class. How do you define working class?
People that work, I guess. They don't trade properties or real estate or stocks or whatever, or sit at home and make phone calls for 2 hours a day or something. They work.
So is the CEO of Apple who works a working class person?
Well, I just specifically said sit on their ass and talk on the phone for 2 hours a day. So I was referring to CEOs there.
Okay, so is a manager at an Apple store working class?
Probably.
Really?
I mean, if they're just at an Apple store, yeah, probably.
Is a professional basketball player working class?
Probably not. I don't know. I don't know. Personally, I think that's the entertainment industry.
Well, you said that anyone who works is working class. So
I guess we got to define work on this one, right?
Is Travis Scott working class?
I don't know who that is.
Famous rapper.
I don't listen to new music. I'm sorry.
Well, it doesn't matter. You said that all workers are working class.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on how you define work. I mean, I don't consider a lot of those things work. I don't consider talking on the phone for 2 hours to tell someone to do so. I don't consider that work. I don't. I guess you could say.
Okay. Good point. But are people who work in call centers then not working class?
That's working. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they're sitting on the phone all day, sitting on their asses, talking on the phone.
Yeah, but they're not like CEOs making like top-down decisions. They're actually working. And I've done like call stuff, and it's brutal.
It's not necessarily about whether or not you sit on your ass all day or whether or not you have a lot of money. It's about your work in the sense of, the quantum of unskilled labor relative to the society.
I guess I don't really know what you just said, to be honest.
This is just why I'm a little bit confused and frustrated right now, because you came into this debate saying that the professional managerial class is non-existent and that it's just a term used to divide people.
Sure.
And that they're different from the working class, and therefore they have different collective aims than the working class, and they're openly hostile to the working class. And now, when I posed the question of can you define working class, you couldn't even define working class. You just said working class is anyone who's a worker.
Yeah, and then we can define working. Like, I personally, again, I don't consider CEOs working class. If you do want me to actually make a blanket definition, because I can do that. That's what I asked. Yeah, working class, people who work, they have no ownership in their kind of, I guess co-op, you could consider that working class, but they work for somebody. Specifically, they're probably, I would say,
work for someone.
Yeah, I would say that they probably should more be leaning toward the lower income end. I wouldn't consider I wouldn't consider a doctor working class, right? But maybe a nurse.
Part of the professional managerial class because they have a highly specialized trade that requires immense regulation, which I don't think is a bad thing. And they also had to have a highly specialized education to achieve the position they're in. They have a higher quantum of unskilled labor relative to society to be able to hold that position.
Sure.
So you do recognize then that there is a different class from the working class that, say, doctors can be a part of, or that
but I don't know what the distinction accomplishes.
So the distinction accomplishes what we addressed earlier on when we were defining what a class is. A class is, a body of people that has different collective interests, economic interests, and different collective consciousness. Therefore, they're going to be striving for different things.
Well, do you think that doctors necessarily, because they're doctors, would be so the PMC is supposed to be working on the benefit of the capitalist class, right? So do you think doctors are more likely to support lower taxes on rich people because they're doctors and they don't work for someone else? I don't quite understand what the distinction really provides.
So that's not what I said. Sure. First of all, it is important to note that the professional managerial class at times, they can uphold a version of progressive politics. It's possible, and it's happened throughout history. This happened a lot during the 70s. Doctors, nurses, teachers, creative specialists like writers and stuff like that. The members of the PMC can hold progressive politics, but it's not a fixed feature of the professional managerial class so much as it's a strategy that lends credibility to its secure role as the architects of cultural hegemony.
Okay. All right. So, okay. I'm going to be honest. I don't really get it. I don't understand what intrinsically makes someone like a doctor or someone like I don't know, if you own your own store, if you're a small business owner, are you part of that class as well? All of a sudden, intrinsically? Because I can say that, I think that there is a distinction. I think there's a lot of distinctions, but at the end of the day, I don't like this by default assumption that because someone is PMC, that automatically makes them the enemy. I don't quite understand that. Or
that I literally just said that PMC can hold progressive politics at times.
Sure.
And whether they're doing it consciously or unconsciously, it's in an effort to manipulate the culture of a society, the beliefs, the explanations, perceptions, values, and so on of a society, so that the worldview of the ruling class can essentially become the accepted cultural norm.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I personally don't care about any of these definitions. I'm going to be honest. The original debate, right? And how we got to this conversation was I think you called Netflix workers parasites and PMC. I was always much more concerned with the term parasite. And I also...
so the definition I just gave you proves that they're, in a sense, parasitic, right? Or they can be, right? Because if the PMC hold progressive politics only in an effort to win over working class people under the guise of progressive politics, to, manipulate society into...
But what are they manipulating, and how is it manipulative?
They're manipulating society just in the ways that I just listed, but not just Netflix workers, but any member of the PMC, the beliefs, explanations, perceptions, values, etc. Of society, so that the worldview of the ruling class becomes the accepted cultural norm.
I don't really think that is a definition that I really care about, to be honest. And I don't think most people...
Do you think that doctors and Netflix writers and Netflix senior engineers have the same interests as a working class person who makes up the lowest quantum of labor in a society?
I would say that they could. I mean, it's very possible. Like, doctors, not all doctors are rich. Not all writers at Netflix or even any movie studio, they're not by default super rich.
They could, but that's not the norm.
I don't know what the norm is. There's a lot of people that are working class that support capitalism as well. There's a lot of people have a lot of bizarre opinions. My initial point here again was that the Netflix walkout and protest was good, that they're not parasites, and that the message of it was good. I mean, we've kind of devolved into this weird definition game, and that's that's fine, I guess. But I'm not.
Because this is the basis of everything I'm saying, but I don't think. Well, I'm not thinking this. You stated that you're not really understanding what I'm saying. So
it's not that I don't understand. More so,
that is what you said.
I did. I said the words "I don't understand." Yes, that's correct. But it's not so much that I'm oh, this is so big level. I mean, it is. It's huge level. But my point is, I just don't understand the distinction. It doesn't matter to me at all. And I think it has nothing to do with the conversation about Netflix.
Let me break it down a little bit further then.
You can feel free to continue breaking it down. That's great.
Well, no, because this is the essence of the whole argument that I'm making.
Yeah.
So as an industry like the tech industry in particular, they've absorbed diversity into their corporate culture. And I think that reflects in the same way at Netflix as well with what we're seeing right now. And the main reason behind this is because working class people, they have a common understanding of what makes their jobs, what makes their lives miserable. And it's because of the working conditions that, they have. But for liberal reasons, like liberal identitarian reasons and liberal credibility reasons, you have these upper echelons of the middle class, which I define as, and many people commonly recognize as the professional managerial class, as essentially trying to push this woke identitarian politics onto the workplace.
What is that? What does that mean?
Well, for example, in the workplace, it can mean sensitivity trainings, diversity initiatives, at-will firing practices. No, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but at the end of the day, what it does is it's telling the working class people of said company that those are the common ills that they are facing in the workplace, and those are the only common ills, and that is what is the root cause of their issues and their pain in the workplace, when you and I both know that that's not the case. The root cause of working class suffering in the workplace is not a lack of sensitivity trainings, diversity initiatives, or at-will firing practices. Do you disagree with that?
I would not say that that's standard. Okay, so my opinion on, I think diversity is good, first of all. I think that there's, I would say, I would go out on a limb here and say that there's 0% of instances where diversity would be worse than not having diversity, I guess.
That's not what I'm arguing.
Well, yes. This is like a, when you have the number one and then there's an A, B, C, D, right? So hear me out here. I do think that by default, employers, especially big corporations and companies, I think by default, they're trying to, pit people against each other and absolutely scapegoat the issues. By default, absolutely. So yes, they've got it like a very motivated reason to try to basically tell people that the problem isn't this, it's that, or something like that. When yes, in reality, It is more so probably, if you want to quantify it, but personally I don't feel the need to. More so probably economic issues that are more relevant than social issues. But at the end of the day, I think what we really need here is we need solidarity between people that are oppressed in all capacities. So again, at the end of the day, I do think advocating for trans rights at the level that the Netflix walkout did is a good thing. There are a lot of people in a lot of positions, workers, poor people, middle class, upper class, rich people that do not like transgender people. We're seeing a slur, a flur, or what I'm thinking of a word, of laws in southern states, where I live in a southern state, where trans people are trying to be erased from legal definitions, banned from getting healthcare. So again, I do think that identity issues like trans rights, especially right now in this climate, I think are as important as economic rights in a lot of instances. And I don't think that really dividing these two kind of things, I think that it's all the same struggle, personally.
Well, okay, so you say it's the same struggle, but in like about halfway through in your spiel just there, you just said that you feel as though economic issues are more important than social issues.
I said you could think that, and I'm willing to listen to that argument. But I think that it's not as, I think that the idea of comparing which, like, as if like one, maybe if you want to prioritize, like if you want to talk about political organizing, what would be more likely to get like a 51% in a certain situation? Yeah, sure, you could go with that. But at the end of the day,
what do you think? I'm just curious, because this is what the debate is about, and so what do you think is more important? Workers who are fighting for better salaries, better, hourly conditions, better contract negotiations, more benefits. Otherwise, the economic issues are more important, or do you think that social issues such as, getting a Netflix special taken off of the air, and sensitivity trainings, diversity initiatives, and at-will firing practices are more important?
I mean, again, it depends on the context. I think the idea of having a conversation about what kinds of rights are more important, like I would say, like if you want to talk about prioritizing things, I would prioritize like healthcare. I would say that the idea that workers don't by default get health insurance plans or whatever, but like, yeah, we can talk about prioritization. My point though, and the whole reason why I engaged in this debate is because I think the kind of juxtaposition that you were making when this debate initially happened, and it was a couple weeks ago, right? So it's, it's not fresh in the mind anymore. But you're calling Netflix workers specifically parasites while this was a trending news story. And I feel like that was just kind of I felt like that was pointless. It was rude and it was divisive. And again, at the end of the day, I
think it was an accurate assessment of who they are. Because if you look at the Netflix workers, I mean, as I just explained, what they're doing is not explicitly, combating the corporate capitalist class. Which I would even argue that they themselves have become a part of based on their, position in the workplace. But also, I mean, they have a long history of being openly hostile to workers.
So every organizer and every person that participated in the Netflix strike, you have found that their history within that company is harassing people below them. If that's true, I haven't seen that. And so that's something I'd like to read, but I haven't seen that piece of information.
So there's two main organizers, Tara Field and Ashley Marie Preston. Do you know of any other main organizers? Because I know of those two as being the... I saw Ashley say herself that she was the lead organizer, and Tara said that... Tara was labeled in an article as being like a co-organizer.
Sure. I don't think that the organizer's personal history has, like, I think it's important to think about it.
You don't think how they've treated working class people in the past will necessarily dictate their feelings about working class people?
What were their feelings about working class people in relation to this specific walkout?
Well, I can give you the walkout wasn't about class analysis or anything like that. It was about opposing the Dave Chappelle special, so I can't give you an answer for that.
That's not true. The walkout was after trans employees were fired in retaliation for their online posts. So that's when the
So-
walkout occurred. It was not like, immediately after the closer broadcast, and then like the CEO went out there and said, yo, Dave Chappelle's my bro, man. And then they walked out.
But this was all started in direct response to the Dave Chappelle special, and you even just said...
Well, yeah, there's a chain of events. There's a timeline.
And you said at the start of the debate that this whole walkout movement was a movement to basically call out and counter what you described as a transphobic comedy special that Dave Chappelle put on. So are we changing our definition of what it was now, or is that what
it's more so of kind of nailing down the timeline, right? So there's a difference between...
That's what you said it is. So are you changing your definition, or is that what you're calling it?
Right. So it's about nailing down the timeline. So again, something can start at point A, and then we can arrive, let's say, at point F. And then, but like point F, we wouldn't have arrived at point F if it weren't for, let's say, B, C, D, and E. And then let's say E specifically, like that point in the timeline is specifically what led to the events of F, right? So A doesn't necessarily lead to F by itself. And that's what I'm talking about there. So yes, the whole thing started with the Dave Chappelle special airing. That's where it started. But then there were several events, like the CEO going on there and doing damage control, saying that he doesn't think it's transphobic or whatever, all that kind of stuff, without consulting trans employees. Trans employees going on Twitter to talk about how they don't appreciate how they're being treated, and then getting fired mysteriously for cause a couple days later, and then after an investigation, it's like, oops, our bad, right? But, they made a big public deal about firing it, right? So there's a lot of these things that occurred after that initial thing. And also, we can't have this conversation without even just discussing the content of the special or what the demands are. Give me a sec here, bud. I think that they were transphobic. I don't think that... you can analyze the impossible or beyond thing as a joke, right? That's possible, but the rest of it really wasn't a joke. And so it's important to understand that it really, if you get platformed and you say bigoted stuff, you have to be able to accept criticism. And at the end of the day, this story wouldn't have happened in the way that it did if people could just be okay with someone getting criticized online.
So it's not just that they were getting criticized, and I also want to add that I'm familiar with there's a lot of news articles that cited that there was like a major person within Netflix, one of the lead organizers, who I believe was Tara, it was Tara Field, who was fired and then reinstated before the walkout even took place. So there's that, but also Team Trans. So I'm just saying that what they were doing, the protest wasn't necessarily to get Tara rehired, because Tara had already been reinstated.
Sure.
Now I don't. Okay, so are we going to go with your original definition of what the walkout was then? That it was...
Well, again, you can get fired and then reinstated after public backlash.
Initial Dave Chappelle comedy special, because that's what you initially said. So I'm going to run off that. But then also, the workers who did this walkout, and keep in mind, there was supposed to be... They said that at first they were saying there was going to be like over 1,000 workers that were participating in this walkout. And then there was some initial day of firsthand reports that said they were expecting only hundreds. And from what I've seen in reporting in The Verge, they said there was only 28 actual Netflix workers in attendance that day. Okay. And I drove past it, and there was a lot of media there. There was way more media than there were actual Netflix workers if there was only 28 Netflix workers there. But also, the workers were organized by a group called Team Trans, which was cited as saying they believe that the Dave Chappelle comedy special is transphobic, and we're calling for Netflix to commit to releasing more intersectional content. So clearly, what Team Trans is saying about the Dave Chappelle segment, the special, runs in it runs in the same vein of argument that you initially put forward, that this was about the Dave Chappelle special. Therefore, it further proves my argument that this was not an explicitly anti-capitalist action or anything like that, and that what the workers are doing is, in a sense, parasitical based on their own place or their own position within the workplace. And even furthermore, I think that the Netflix workers we're only doing this to create and manipulate the like an acceptable cultural norm that will tell working class people within the workplace of Netflix itself that the main issues in their life and the main pains that they feel in the workplace do not revolve around the economic issues that we were talking about not too long ago, but instead that they revolve around social issues.
Yeah. Now again, I think that social issues and economic issues are really important. I think all oppressed people's struggles matter. I don't necessarily think it matters how many actual people attended the demonstrations. I think what matters at the end of the day is how the demonstrations went, what happened, what led to those things from happening, what their demands were, how they wanted to go about displaying their arguments or whatever. Like again, if there's like a strike and only 4 people are there because let's say it's super cold out and you know maybe people need to take a break or sleep or whatever, just because there's 4 people.
Nice sunny day.
Well, I'm providing this is an analogy or a comparison or an example. Like if there's 4 people striking, does that mean the strike is irrelevant? Does that mean the strike isn't as important? Isn't important enough? I don't think so. I think it doesn't matter. If there could have been 3 workers there, that doesn't make the demands any less valid. That doesn't make the concerns any less valid. So I think that's an important distinction.
I don't think necessarily it does, but I think in this case, I think it does.
Why in this case is it so important how many people attended the demonstration?
Because if there was, I mean, obviously there's probably many Netflix workers who hate their lives and hate the workplace and, despise going to work every day, right? But if there was true, like, solidarity amongst the Netflix workers for a said walkout, because they felt as though participating in said walkout was going to challenge the capitalist class, which runs that company, and would substantively change the conditions of the workplace to alleviate the ills that they face in the workplace, then there would have been more people there due to the fact that there were no large structural, obstacles to participating in the walkout.
Yeah, I don't think any of that really changes the idea that we're debating the actual demands, right? Like, yes, like what were the demands? Like if we're going to talk about the structural changes, I think the demands do provide some sort of changes, and I also think that it's a broader messaging campaign. I mean, again, I want to reiterate the only reason why I, responded to the debate challenge is because I think it's bizarre to call this whole thing parasitical or whatever. I just think it's bad framing, and especially
calling the whole thing parasitical. That's you're mincing my words. I called the Netflix leaders themselves parasitical, and they are. I can provide examples here for you. I mean, Ashley Marie Preston, who's the leader of the Netflix walkout, has a net worth of $5 to $8 million. Was a Warren surrogate. Has gone on record.
What is
it?
Okay, I'm going to be honest. I don't care about.
Well, if you're not going to let me make one of the fundamental, points of my argument, then why even have a debate? You can't say
Elizabeth Warren sucks. How is that relevant?
You can't just say I don't care about your point and try to talk over me when I'm making a point about how they are openly hostile.
I can say
hostile to working class people.
I'm openly hostile.
So let me. No, not you. They are the leaders of the walkout, who I just called parasitical, right?
All right. Yes.
So let me make my point. I let you talk for however long you want to talk.
I'm sorry. I apologize. You keep going.
So here's some things that Ashley Marie Preston has said in the past on Twitter when referring to a business that she went to. Apparently, I think like maybe a coffee shop or something like that. She said, Latino and Asian businesses need to stop being rude and fucking disrespectful. And I know it's a lot to ask in California, but speak fucking English too. Yeah, I said it. Here's another one. Just cuss that Asian bitch clean the fuck out. You messed up my order. And then blame me? ? English is my first language, bitch. Never ordering there again. And it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, that sounds like a really bad person that said really bad things.
Classist examples of tweets like that. Matt Orfala posted a video where, she was She was, being bigoted towards people who take abortion pills. She was being bigoted towards Asian people, towards Latino people, to Asian people on their driving capabilities. She called someone a fat Mexican piss blonde Miss Piggy looking bitch. It goes on and on and on and on. And also saying when I don't know what her gender identity was at the time, but was using the F word quite a bit as well. Now, I'm not even going to get into that because I don't think that's necessarily important to the class conversation that we had with the initial examples I put forward. But what's clear there, and also what's clear about Tara Field due to her support for Joe Biden, saying I can take a breath now that Joe Biden's elected, and that she's in a position of privilege and power. I think it's very clear that these people are openly hostile to working class individuals.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say, it is cancel culture, I think, to say that a walkout is bad because the organizers were racist on Twitter.
Did I say that?
Well, yeah, you said the organizers are parasites potentially, but I don't think that has anything to do with the walkout or the demands of the walkout or the specific striking event.
Well, let me clarify, because I said they're parasitical because they have a long recorded history of being classist, and their action is operating under the guise of progressivism to create a safer workplace for HR, an easier workplace for HR, which operates at the behest of the managers of the workplace, and they're not listening to nor acting upon any of the needs of working class people, which sometimes professional managerial class members can and do act upon, but in this case they are not.
Okay. So again, I do think that the personal history of these people is not as relevant as the walkout, what preceded the walkout, and the demands of the walkout. We're getting into this again, I personally think Elizabeth Warren's garbage. I think supporting her is garbage. I think those tweets are garbage. But I mean, also, I don't know enough about this person, their history. I don't really care, to be honest with you. I don't give a shit. Because if they were Trump voters, I wouldn't care it either. If they were Tulsi supporters or Howie Hawkins support, I don't care what supported, who they supported. I care about if we're going to discuss the Netflix walkout, it's yes.
You care about the fact that she was being openly hostile and classist to working class people?
As far as the walkout and the strike and those actions are concerned, it's irrelevant. It's also possible she has evolved on her positions. I don't know. I don't think. Now, yes, it's interesting history to know people's Twitter history, especially going into how they performed at organizing. Could the organizing have been better? How can you do some sort of autopsy on that to make sure that it's better off next time? Yes, you can pick and choose which leader would maybe be in a better position to be in that spotlight. So, that those are all things that are important and should be discussed. But I also think that that's separate from the walkout itself. You can call the organizers themselves parasites, whatever, I don't care. But your initial tweets that spawned this whole discussion in the first place were calling the Netflix walkout as an entity, as a group, as an event, as a strike action. The action specifically in the action in and of itself was parasitical, which I disagree with.
The organizers of the walkout, yes, are parasitical.
Okay. But was the walkout itself parasitical?
You could make that argument.
All right, so can you make that argument then?
Yeah, I'll make it again because I've already made it before, so I'll make it again. So let's define parasitical.
Okay.
Having the nature or habitats of living off another, blood-sucking, leech-like, parasitic dependent, whatever, relying or requiring a person or thing for support. So here is why I define the Netflix workers as parasitical. First of all, you could call them parasitical in a very, very simplistic definition, in the sense that they literally require working class people to live, to eat, to have their basic living necessities met. Yet they themselves do not produce anything for the rest of society. What do? They produce dumb shows and movies and shit like that.
I think art and entertainment are very valuable in a culture and society that's healthy.
It's not necessarily productive labor, though. So it's different from that of the working class.
I think the idea that productive is defined in the way I think anything that produces something is productive. I don't think there's any more inherent value in being a janitor than there is in writing a script or something.
So it's not productive labor, though, because if you look at the business structure of Netflix, it's not necessarily taking a surplus value from the Netflix workers and using whatever price gauge it was determined to create that product to then determine their final cost for the consumer. Like Netflix itself, do you think that Terra's or whoever else, the other leaders of the Walkout, do you think that their salaries are directly connected to how much you pay for Netflix every month?
I don't know their salaries. I don't have enough information on that one. But also,
if they were paid, say, $1 million less per year, would that reduce the cost that you pay for Netflix per month?
It could. I don't know if they're in that position to make those decisions.
How long has Netflix had the same price?
I don't know. Didn't they just increase the price like a couple months ago, I think? I don't know. Didn't they? Anyway, I got the list of demands here, so I want to read these.
You don't want to keep talking about this? Because I found this really interesting. Well, and I think it's part of the crux of the argument as well.
I'm more concerned with the walkout itself as an action. I do think,
okay. So sometimes you say you're concerned with the walkout, and then sometimes you say you're concerned with my definition of them as parasitical. And then when I start to give you a definition of them as parasitical, then you change the conversation back to the other thing. So let's pick something to actually talk about, and let's actually pick it apart and stop jumping around.
No, I apologize for jumping. I'm just drinking coffee. I'm caffeinated, so what happens. But I think that I want to read the demands just because I think that this is the main part of this whole thing. What was the walkout? What was the action about? I think that defines whether or not it can be parasitical. Now, I do think if they had less salary, maybe Netflix would be cheaper. I don't know if they're in the position to make the judgment on what the price of Netflix is, or if they could slash their own salaries. If they personally knew that they could slash their salary and then it would reduce Netflix by 8 cents or something, that would be cool. And if they did that, that would be cool. I'll
just respond to that because I do want to finish that point there.
Sure, go for it.
Sure, hypothetically it could, but the normal answer is no, it would not, because this is what is known as rentierism. It's the privatization of general intellect. It's like how Bill Gates has gotten as rich as he is today. A lot of it is not because of direct exploitation of workers. It's oftentimes, and you can even look, Microsoft pays a lot of its intellectual workers a relatively high salary, as does Netflix. It pays Tara a relatively high salary. She even admits that. And it's because of this privatization of the general intellect, which basically is the same thing that's happening at Microsoft as is happening at Netflix. I mean, the price that people pay per month is not dependent upon how many shows are produced or how many, what the salary is of a given show writer or anything like that. It's different than a direct, common understanding of capitalism.
Okay. I don't think being an artist or entertainer is inherently taking money from the working class, because a lot of entertainers and artists are working. I think writing scripts, especially churning out shows at the rate that Netflix does, it is work. It is difficult. It's a different kind of labor. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's sucking money out of the working class, because that would imply that they're not.
I think you misunderstood. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that Netflix is privatizing the intellect of their workers, the writers, the
as talent, in they are profiting off of the writers in a way that isn't proportional to how much they're getting paid by the company.
No, I think they pay them quite well. I'm saying it's what they're doing is they're privatizing part of their general intellect. And Netflix, as a company, is becoming rich by appropriating the rent that followed from the privatization.
So would you say that it would be better for an artist to make all of their art open source? Or public domain?
No, at that point, it wouldn't be open domain. It's a question of whether or not they're acting independent as an independent artist, or if they're acting as a part and parcel of a larger corporation, which actually strikes at the heart of what I was saying earlier on, that you weren't able to, you said you didn't understand what I was saying when I was talking about the professional managerial class, because a lot of times historically, you'd have artists, you've had talented people, you'd have writers, creatives, etc., whatever you want to call them, who did act independently, who did have independent businesses or independent operations as creative people, right? But through basically being absorbed into corporate America, they have become a part of the professional managerial class in the workplace based on their position in the workplace. So the artist of yesteryear is different, who worked independently, is different than the masses of artists and creatives today who work in a given corporation.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that doing independent art is more fulfilling. You have more creative control. I personally do my art in a way that isn't beholden to, I don't have a Netflix special, right? So I don't work for them. Now, I would say that that's better, but also I can't necessarily fault someone who wants to get into an industry and they choose to go to Netflix and maybe be part of a writing team to learn how other people's writing styles go. Maybe they can learn a skill on that. Maybe they can improve their own writing based on that and the team atmosphere. I would say that producing content for a private corporation isn't as good as making it in the public domain. Personally, I don't believe in intellectual property when it comes to art. I think if in a good society, everything should be public domain and artists should be compensated for their art, based on its consumption. I think the idea that you can own someone else's story or own someone else's music or own someone else's words, I think that that's ridiculous. So there's a dog barking, if you're wondering. I think that a company like Netflix even existing, I think, is a joke. Personally, I think all streaming services should be, free and publicly available, right? So, I don't.
I mean, that's not what I'm really arguing, but I do want to hit on that last point there, because you said that you think that technically, artists working for corporations is not as good, or you could understand how it could be not as good as doing, art independently.
Well, yeah.
You said because you're creating art for a corporation, or you're creating for a corporation, and the role, you have to recognize, though, that when you create for a corporation, the role of a creative is to push the boundaries of mass consumer culture, and corporate management will oftentimes recognize and tolerate the eccentricities of artists and creatives, because at the end of the day, as I have discussed multiple times already, they are creating the worldview of the ruling class as the acceptable cultural norm, and they are telling the working class that their ills in the workplace and their suffering in the workplace is as a result of social issues rather than economic issues.
Okay. Yeah, I really.
Corporation is bad.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Why do you think that doing an art for a corporation is not as good? Because that's what you said.
Yeah, I just think the idea of a corporation owning your creative material, I think just on a conceptual level, I think is ridiculous. I think it's fundamentally absurd. But also, I do think that it's actually not mandated, last time I checked, to have a Netflix subscription. I have not always had a Netflix subscription. Sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't. Depends on if I use it. Right, so I don't think that workers or regular people or society at large is guilted into having Netflix by default, and it's they need to have Netflix to be part of society or something. I mean, you can make that. We live in a capitalist society where consumerism is the norm. Everyone consumes, right? We all overconsume. We all buy things that we don't need all the time. We buy food that's bad for the environment. We waste packaging all the time. I think that consumerism as a culture in America is horrible, and we need to work on that as a society. I don't think that Netflix specifically is a specific bad actor when it comes to consumerism. I think they're just part of the same machine that's horrible. So I don't really.
So you said that you think that you just have a fundamental disagreement with the privatization of intellectual property.
Sure.
Do you also recognize, though, that a creative who's working at the behest of a corporation is going to create fundamentally different things than the creative who's working independently?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if I'm working like upstairs versus downstairs on the couch or in my bed, the quality or what I'm going to produce is going to be different based on my environment.
You know, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, if I work for Netflix and let's say I want to get a promotion in Netflix, I may write something that I think that a specific person in a higher position is going to like specifically. I might try to tailor to their interest, which might be necessarily diabolical.
Put a pin in that. You would try to tailor your creation to the interests.
I could see how a person would do that, yeah.
Of the hirer at said corporation.
Absolutely. That makes sense. A lot of, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. People want to get promotions. I can see how that would happen.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to put a pin in that. You, as an individual, can recognize that artists working for a corporation are going to tailor their creations for the corporation itself in an effort to push the boundaries of mass consumer culture, right? Because that is at the end goal, what a corporation is trying to achieve.
I mean, we're doing that right now. I mean, like, we are demanding people consume our media online, and we're going to tailor what we say to a specific audience. I mean, we're doing that right now.
Be a part of the working class.
What?
That's the difference. I don't think I'm part of the working class.
Okay. I mean, personally, I think what I do is work, but that's just me.
It's work, but you're not a part of the working class.
I personally am a very poor person. I don't have that much money.
It doesn't matter if they are paying the Netflix workers in dog shit. It doesn't matter.
So are you saying that
about their collective class consciousness?
I work for Google,
their role in the workplace, and what they do.
I would say that people that do podcasts, I think, have, very bad representation and rights in their work. I think the idea that we are guilted into producing content for these platforms, I think, is problematic. They have a lot of.
You can stop tomorrow if you want to. You can do whatever you want. You can go and change all your political views and go and do the same thing, and it literally doesn't matter. Podcasters, Twitch streamers, YouTube streamers are not working class.
Okay, I mean, again, I think that these divisions are useless, personally.
Okay, they're not useless, and here's why. Richard Wolff summed up why they are not useless very well in a podcast just the other day I was watching on the Surfs. He was talking about Netflix workers, actually. He was on the Surfs TV talking about Netflix workers, and he brought up a very important point. I think I even wrote it down in my notes here. He said, well, he did acknowledge that a unity of workers who have different, class consciousness can sometimes be built on the disunity of your differences. But he also said, and made a very, very important point, and stressed this heavily, that not all workers' interests are the same. Even though the majority of people are workers, they do not have the same commitment to a given or a certain type of politics in a certain way. So that's the fundamental argument I'm putting forward here, is that just because you're a worker, you are not necessarily all working class. And just because you're a worker does not mean that you can't be openly hostile or working against the interests, whether consciously or unconsciously, of working class people.
I am going to be honest. I don't think it doesn't necessarily mean it, but that also doesn't, it's not like it necessarily doesn't mean it. I mean, I personally find the distinction between, I just find the distinction to be baffling, to be honest with you. I don't really understand it, but I would like to get into these demands on the Netflix walkout, because the demands, I think, are absolutely the crux of this whole situation, and we're judging the action. I mean, again, I noticed, you're doing the whole acting thing. I get it. No, I feel it. But
I just can't believe you called yourself, and not just yourself, but the category of streamers, political podcasters, working class.
I would say that we are working. I'm working. I don't know about you. Hey, I'm a small business owner. Let me just tell you, okay? But anyway, I would like to go to these demands.
No, I also don't think you just listened to a word I said about what Richard Wolff said about the distinctions in workers.
I've met Richard Wolff. He's a very nice man. I happen to disagree with him on this one.
Wolff. I could care less.
Oh, I'm saying I disagree. I listened, and in one ear, out the other, because I didn't care.
That's important because this you're going to explain now how you disagree, right?
No, because I think I want to get into these demands. Because I think that these demands are what we're having a value judgment on the Netflix walkout action. I don't care about like these small niche conversations about what is the technical, if you carry the 3 and have a comma right there, what the difference is between working.
As I mentioned, this was like the premise of Richard Wolff's point.
I am not debating Richard Wolff.
As it is the premise of my point, yet you are discounting it and you don't want to talk
because
about it.
I don't think it's relevant. Like
it's relevant. That's the premise of my argument.
I mean, you can think it's relevant personally. I don't see, like, we are discussing the Netflix walkout, the strike that was about that. That is an event. You are going after the people that are doing the event, what their class is. We're not going after the event itself. Like, I think we're just having two different conversations, personally.
Okay, sure. Go on. Talk about the demands of the Netflix workers.
Well, yes. Well, I got the demands. I got it on my other screen, so I'm going to be looking over here. This is me reading the demands. So they want to...
Wait, before you do you think I read the Netflix demands before I started tweeting and I started talking about this? Because I feel like there's a lot of assumptions that those who are critical of the Netflix workers did not actually read their demands. But I want to make it clear that I did.
All right, that's cool. I more so just want to get it out there because I want to, like, respond in real time to how these demands benefit working people and why it's important that they got higher recognition and that they got media attention. So they want to create a new fund specifically to develop trans and non-binary content. That's, it's a good thing, especially when, it's a company that ostensibly claims to support oppressed peoples when it comes to identity, right? That they actually put the money where their mouth is and actually say, like, all right, we've caused harm to that community. Maybe we should give them a platform as well where they can get their opinions on that, wherever they can get marketing in the same way that Dave Chappelle did, so that opposing viewpoints can be equally, distributed so people understand why something could be offensive, why it shouldn't be accepted, that kind of stuff. And again, I think that benefits workers because, again, we have a culture where a lot of people do not like trans, non-binary people. We still have a culture where a lot of people don't like gay people. I think that when you factor in, right, that a working class person can vote for Donald Trump and a working class person can be racist or transphobic or homophobic or whatever, or dislike immigrants, the existence of that kind of person, I think, is inherently hugely problematic to creating a working class movement, because if we are still fighting over identity, we're never going to be able to unify and have solidarity that we really need to actually make positive change. Like, again, if look,
pause. You said if we keep fighting over identity, we'll never be able to make working class change.
That's absolutely true, I think.
Do you see how that's like a bit ironic, given your argument today?
I don't. Could you explain that?
Okay, well, all of the demands you're about to list out surround identitarian politics. All the demands on the list surround identitarian politics. And the premise of my argument was that the Netflix walkout is not explicitly focusing on the economic issues of the working class of Netflix, and it's not explicitly anti-capitalist. And the reason why they are engaging in this, regardless of whether it's conscious or unconscious, is because, they want to further the absorption of diversity into corporate culture and, sell the working class people on this lie that sensitivity training, diversity initiatives, and at-will firing practices and other identitarian solutions to identitarian issues are what's going to fix their suffering in the workplace, which is not true.
Okay. So I don't think every strike action needs to be explicitly in favor of expanding economic rights for every working person. I think that having that kind I'm drinking seltzer, so I'm a little burpy. I'm sorry. I think having that kind of overall solidarity is a good thing, but I don't think it's necessarily mandatory. In the same way that I don't think that a climate change demonstration should necessarily, have like healthcare priorities as one of their, if they're doing a demonstration based on climate change, I would say that they should stick it to that subject. So I think that the whole core of these problems that the Netflix walkout was started over was the idea that trans people are not taken seriously and that their offense doesn't matter and that they don't have any sort of stake or they're not allowed to have any say in regards to the whole big cancel culture thing with Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle made millions of dollars. He's continuing to go on tour. He's getting a lot of money from this whole cancel culture thing.
So did the organizers of the walkout. That's why it doesn't really matter and why I don't bring it up. But you continue to bring it up. But also, listen to what you just said. You just said that this is about representation in the workplace, and this is about identity-based issues. Yet just like 3 minutes ago, you said that if we keep fighting over identity-based issues...
Well, who's fighting over identity-based issues here? Like, who is taking extreme offense to the idea that a trans person should be allowed to participate in a statement that Netflix is going... Like, Netflix, the company, is going to write a statement. Should we allow a trans person in on that statement crafting, given that the statement is going to be about transgender people? I think that is fun. Like, I don't know why someone would get offended by that. Like, I think a trans person is...
I'm not offended by that.
Sure.
Did I ever say I was offended by that?
No, but you're saying that, like, that by discussing why trans people should be in those positions because they're relevant to the positions, like, that should be the case by default, and it's not, right? So we're in a situation where, like, it's not dividing by identity.
Did I say I explicitly opposed that?
I'm not talking about you specifically, but I'm saying...
Well, you're debating me, so let's focus on what I've said.
Well, you were mentioning that the divisions of identity politics are because these demands are about identity. Where I would say the default is poor and changing it reaches an equilibrium. And if the equilibrium is necessarily offensive to people, I have a problem with that person, right? So it's not like trans people...
Equilibrium. I'm not following you there.
Well, the situation is there's a statement that was written, that they made these statements, they fired trans... Right. So a statement was written, they wanted to participate in crafting that statement given that it was about trans people, right?
Okay.
Trans people are necessarily, by subject of being trans, more relevant when discussing the, let's say, trans point of view because they are trans people. Now, you can be a cisgender person and, speak on behalf of trans people in certain issues, absolutely. But if there are trans people to pick and, from the crowd, they will necessarily, in the same way that that workers are necessarily going to advocate for their own, class welfare, so will people of certain identities. People of
Okay, wait, that's important.
I'm waiting.
Because you're saying that in the same way that workers would advocate for different working conditions to impact their workplace or their jobs, alleviate the ills that they face in their jobs.
Sure.
That's what marginally oppressed, be it for gender or sexuality or whatever, people in Netflix are doing right now, which leads back to my central point that this is not about, a working class issue. This is not about a working class issue. This is about an identitarian issue. And it doesn't impact the needs of working class people. Therefore, that's probably one of the main reasons why working class people at Netflix didn't actually show up in mass sums for the walkout. There was only 28 people there.
Well, yeah.
And the main people who were there were representatives of the upper echelons of Netflix itself.
Well, I would say identity issues and working class issues. I think that the fact that I said and listed two things, I think is inherently such a problem that this whole thing really does need to be addressed. I'm
following you there. What do you mean by and work? What do you mean?
What I mean is the idea that I'm saying identity issues and worker issues, and the fact that I'm not saying issues of oppressed people as a singular uniting subject, an inclusive statement that includes people with identitarian-based issues that may...
So you're saying that they're equally important?
Yes.
Okay, but earlier on in our discussion, you said that economic issues you could see as being, and in many cases are, more important than
yes, I can see why issues. That is like, if you look at it, let's look at a Venn diagram, right? Let's say that you have oppressed peoples of all kinds, right? Economically, you know, like maybe some people's doing well off, but they're, you know, they're having to deal with sexism at the workplace, right? Like, if you look at the Venn diagram, the most common intersection would be economic issues, absolutely. However, my point is, instead of making these categories and dividing ourselves up in these subcategories, I think we should just say we all oppressed peoples should work on behalf of fixing problems for all oppressed peoples. I think that the idea...
Agree.
Yes, no, but I can see, like, my when I said that earlier, like when I said I can see how someone would think economic issues are more important, I can see that because that's the most common intersection. But personally, my thing is I think that we need to fix all of these problems, right? And so again, the idea that trans people should have a platform on Netflix in regards to this big cultural touchstone issue that, you know, again, we're still talking about it 3 weeks later. You were talking about it on your show yesterday or whatever, right? People are still talking about this, right? The fact that is happening, I think that we need to center the walkout's demands, why the walkout happened, and I think that that's a critical piece. Because people still think, like, could you imagine actually thinking the rich millionaire comedian, right, whose parents worked for the State Department is the victim? He's being canceled. Like, imagine thinking that the rich millionaire is the victim, he's been canceled, and not trans people just all over the country that have been canceled, because no one takes trans voices seriously. I think trans people who can't get hired because they're freaks or whatever, you know, I think they're canceled. I think getting fired or, you know, placed on leave as in a public way, that's getting canceled. More so than the rich millionaire comedian who's going on tour and profiting off of his cancel culture tour, and then also whose parents, you know, work for the State Department. I mean, I just personally, I don't see how he's possibly the victim.
I'm not defending Dave Chappelle. I'm not saying that he's being oppressed, even though I think you can make the argument that his already exorbitant revenues are being limited by way of the cancel culture that has followed this, and he addressed that in the follow-up response to the walkout. But that's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about at all. What I'm talking about is the fact that, as you just pointed out, this walkout was not advocating for the interests of all oppressed people. It was just advocating for the identitarian issues, right? Trying to create it's kind of like what DSA does. It's kind of like what DSA does. They create like these hyphenated interest clusters that have like extensive grievance policies with a long list of political demands, just like the Netflix workers. And all of these things appeal to the anxieties of the professional managerial class. They're not inherently anti-capitalist, right? And conveniently enough, with the Netflix workers, all of their demands kind of reflect the ethos of the model employee who's trying to make like a low-stress working environment for the human resources department at the workplace, which operates at the behest of the managers in the owning class of the workplace.
Okay. Well, I would say that I would like to make the analogy of a climate change demonstration doesn't necessarily have to be talking about healthcare issues, or a demonstration on, healthcare issues doesn't necessarily, I don't think that the Netflix walkout, given the subject was about trans people, I don't think they necessarily need to make their walkout, super, anti-capitalist. I also do think that amplifying trans voices, I think, is an intrinsically anti-capitalist kind of message. I mean, I look at trans people throughout history.
Anti-capitalist about their message. Because the way I see it, again, is that their demands reflect the ethos of what one would quantify as the model employee, which tries to make a low-stress, low-task environment for the human resources department of a given workplace. They're trying to make HR's jobs and lives easier.
Okay, that could be a consequence of their walkout and their message, that's possible. But that being a concept, HR having less cases or whatever that's not necessarily a bad thing. If they have less cases because less people are violating certain policies, that would be a palpable win. But I
didn't say it was a bad thing,
okay.
But I also can recognize that it's not necessarily, and in no way do I see it being directly beneficial to the masses of working class people that work at Netflix by way of addressing the suffering, the root causes of the suffering that they feel while working at Netflix. Getting a trans person or more inclusivity in statements or in funding operations for Netflix, specials, things like that, more representation in show writing operations, whatever. That does not address the root capitalist causes of the suffering of working class people. Who to be honest, to be frank, I don't know how many working class people there are at Netflix, but it's not addressing their basic needs.
Well, I would say that, again, the goal doesn't necessarily need to be about addressing the basic needs of the most common denominator of oppressed peoples. I think that trans people having higher platforms, being able to discuss the trans experience, especially, again, the Dave Chappelle thing is kind of a cultural touchstone. I mean, there are a lot of people talking about it. It's a big, cultural story. I personally, it blows my mind, right? But the idea that trans people should have an equal style of platform, to me, I think is inherently anti-capitalist, because if you look at how trans people have been treated throughout history, I mean, my God, right? Like, all kinds of violence has been done. I mean, like, look at what, Nazis did to transgender people, trying to destroy the entire medical history of our existence, and we're still kind of recovering from that in a lot of ways, right? So I think having trans people have a high platform where they're able to get their message out, I think is intrinsically anti-capitalist, because capitalism oppresses people. When people are divided over what, I don't want a trans, or I don't like gay people, that Asian person, I think all of those divisions inherently divide the working class, and is a major, major reason why the working class doesn't have a lot of solidarity, is because there is this giant section of people that are still, they don't like gay people, they don't like trans people, they don't like black people, and that's a problem, and we need to change them. They need to evolve on those subjects. So again, I don't think that Netflix... I think that people need to recognize that, and you actually brought this up earlier, and I thought it was a brilliant point. I think people need to recognize that, if you want to achieve meaningful, substantive, collective economic action and changes in our country, you need to recognize that you're going to be working with people in that effort that do not have the same, views on social issues, and you might see them as being racist or bigoted or bigoted or prejudiced in one way or another. But at the end of the day, if you have a common collective interest in addressing the root causes of the suffering of working class people in this country, you are going to have to look past those identitarian issues to a certain extent. Of course, there's glaring examples of when it must be directly confronted and rejected from a movement. But to a certain extent, you need to look past those things and focus on the substantive economic reality of our country today. And you brought that up. You didn't go into as much detail, but like it's the age-old example of the whiny white collar professional managerial class DSA leftist who is all distraught over the fact that there is a Trump supporter joining his or her union. And it's like, what do? We have a Trump supporter joining our union, when in fact, if you have Trump supporters joining your union, fighting against the root cause of your suffering as a working class person, that means you've won. That means you've won the struggle. Yeah, so I think, by the way, when my roommate's dog gets really upset when they leave the house to go take the trash out. So I'm just saying, whenever they leave the house for a second, that's going to happen. But anyway,
don't worry about it.
I would say I think the onus, well, personally, let me start with my response by saying, I think personally, the main problem lies with the fact that a lot of people are, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the F word, but a lot of people are...
No, don't. Oh, wait, fuck, you can say fuck, yeah.
Okay, a lot of people are fucking stupid, right? I think Trump voters, I think people that vote for Republicans are fucking stupid. And I know that might offend a lot of people, but hear me out, okay? So I think if someone doesn't like black people, if they don't like gay people, if they don't like trans people, right? That's a problem. They need to evolve on those positions. They need to be changed. So if a Trump supporter wanders into my union, I would not say, hey, canceled. Nope, get out. You're not allowed to fight with me for a better thing. I would try to convince them that maybe trans people aren't bad. Convince them that maybe Republicans aren't their friends. Convince them maybe that, gay people aren't going to turn their kids gay or something, right? When you have people like that wander in your territory, I am all about changing them. I'm about trying to heal them of that poison. But again, they are the people that discriminate against trans people are the ones that we're worried about. I don't think that a black person necessarily should have to interact with someone who's wearing a Trump hat where Trump, did a large amount of anti-black messaging in the 2020 election. I don't think that they should necessarily be forced to work together unless that person, is trying to be a better person, unless, they're actively not a threat. They're no longer that kind of person, right? That's the problem here with this identitarian stuff, right? When trans people say...
I think that is the problem with the identitarian stuff. And you have this, liberal mindset that you earlier on said that you rejected when you said that if we continue to only focus on these identitarian issues, we're never going to achieve any real economic progress for the working class in this country.
Yes.
So, it's looking like the stream may have gone out for a minute. I don't know.
Oh, no. Big tech censorship. They got us. They're closing in.
Give me 1 second here. Let me just see what's up. Shit, this happened last night too.
They're closing in.
Let's see.
I'm gonna get raided any minute.
Let's see. It looks like it might be back up.
You having fun, by the way? Because I'm having fun.
Yeah. Oh shit. It just went off completely on Twitch. Let's see how YouTube's doing.
I'm having a good time.
YouTube is still struggling. Okay. Oh, no. Well,
I think the big tech censored us.
I think it's my Wi-Fi. Oh, no. We can just I can restart the stream on my end, I guess, but it's kind of a fucking hassle. Let me just see. Okay. I'm just gonna restart it on my end. If you want to keep talking, I'm down.
No, I'm down. Talking. Yeah, let's go.
Let me just do this. Fuck. Stupid fucking thing. Oh. We back? All right, let me just restart. Oh, looks like we're back on Twitch.
Let's go.
And YouTube is not streaming anymore, but it's whatever.
Mine's uninterrupted, so if you just want to grab the video from me or whatever, later I could just send you the download.
Yeah, it's all good. It just went off on YouTube. Twitch is back up though. So,
all right. Right. So, where were we?
I do not remember.
Right. Oh, right. I called Republicans stupid. Yeah, so I want to extrapolate more on that one because I think they are the ones that I think that they need to be changed. They need to evolve because I don't think, like, yes, can you organize a specific action around is specifically tailored toward economic rights? Yes. Would I support that? Yes. Would I support people that hate, like, black people or gay people in that movement? Not necessarily. I wouldn't want to be around them personally, but if they support, let's just put this in voting coalitions to make it a little bit easier. If they support voting for the Democratic Party, I think is horrible. I think there's a lot of racists. There's a lot of transphobic people in the Democratic Party. Are you kidding? Like, look at Hillary Clinton, right? So I think that, but if someone who hates trans people wants to vote to, make it so the billionaires pay more taxes and I pay less taxes, that's good. I want them in my coalition, but I also want to change them. I want to make them not have those bad beliefs, right? But again, I think actions can be tailored and specifically tailored toward different things. I don't think that every action needs to be as generalized as possible. I think if there are actions based around, improving race relations or people's understanding of trans and gay people or making, like that kind of stuff, I think those actions inherently are anti-capitalist because it will shed oppressed peoples of their divisions. I think a lot of this, to be honest with you, is religious. I think there are a lot, like, if you look at the statistics, 70% of Americans are religious. And when you buy into that kind of framework, I think, that's a big problem in this country. I think that the New Deal, was explicitly one of these things that I'm afraid of, where you have the New Deal that happened that made white people escalate in society so much, but left other people and other minority populations left in the dust for the most part, because the New Deal was specifically tailored to a lot of industries where white people were predominantly working, and it caused a huge race divide when it comes to wealth. I think that that's a problem we need to work on as well. And I think that in and of itself means that we need to have people have higher platforms with trans identities, etc. Yeah.
Okay, but I followed what you said. Sorry, I was restarting the stream.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
But the difference between, say, a collective struggle like the New Deal, let's just say hypothetically the New Deal prioritized identitarian politics as well as in the communist and socialist effort to pursue some sort of like a massive like social investment project from the federal government. Let's say that's what happened. It would have made the end cause a lot more equal for the masses. Black people wouldn't have been left behind. Working class black people and brown people would not have been left behind as much as they were by the New Deal in its historical reality. But at the end of the day, this is not what Netflix workers are pursuing, and this is this is pretty much my main argument here. It's that the Netflix workers are not pursuing a directly anti-capitalist or pro-working class, framework with this walkout. It was purely identitarian, and all this does is creates this. It creates a legal liability. It addresses the issues of legal liability and liberal credibility, right, for Netflix itself, and it makes HR's job potentially a little bit easier. It's not like a collective working class struggle that is currently taking place. So that would be the difference from like a potentially identitarian New Deal struggle compared to what we're seeing with the Netflix walkout here.
Well, I think that we need to understand that there is a broader burgeoning leftist movement in this country made up of a lot of different coalitions and a lot of different parts, right? So, and I'd like to say again, I don't think that because this Netflix walkout specifically didn't tailor toward more pro-working class, pro-economic benefits, because of that, I don't think that necessarily means they are parasites. They're on the enemy team. I don't accept.
It doesn't.
Well, yes, but no, I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm just being as broad and concise in my point. But I think that necessarily, I do think that raising the platforms of trans people trying to achieve more fairness in the workplace when it comes to, your gender identity, your, sexual orientation, your race, whatever, that necessarily is anti-capitalist because it helps burn down barriers that divide us based on identity. I don't.
You could equally though say that it just helps. Actually, you could say that it helps the owning class and it helps the managerial class of Netflix itself because, again, this model employee ethos is represented by those who are struggling for a low stress human resources department, and those are like the primary concerns of the managerial class, and it's not directly antagonistic to the managerial class. And again, these leaders of the walkout, I don't think are concerned with the interests of the working class people within their company because they have a long history of being openly hostile to working class people, either through their actions or their words or their tweets.
Okay, so I think the fundamental disagreement here is whether or not there is genuine, actual, palpable progress in a leftist direction, in a progressive direction, in a direction that we all should commonly strive for, if there's any palpable progress in making purely identitarian gains, right? So I think that, yes, there can be gains that are purely identitarian, based on identity, based on fixing, a lot of problems with, how certain identities or people or kinds of people are, discriminated against in certain areas, right? I do think that those are necessarily anti-capitalist because while, yes, there are rich people that can benefit from these, bridges being rebuilt or whatever metaphor you want to use, there are rich people that can benefit. More necessarily speaking, more people are going to benefit in the lower classes because there are more poorer people. Like, again, if trans people stopped being such a hot topic and there was not 40% of the country that just doesn't accept that trans people exist, there's still a very sizable chunk of the population in this country and across the world especially that don't believe that trans people exist or that they're all crazy or that, all that stuff. I think that changing that is and making so that more poor trans people, because trans people are massively disproportionately poor, massively disproportionately, and discriminated against in the workplace, all that kind of stuff, assaulted, killed, that kind of stuff, right? And so I think fixing those problems is necessarily anti-capitalist because it makes more people have less things to divide each other up, and it helps more trans people that are poor are going to benefit from trans people not being discriminated in the workplace. Yeah, sure. Is Caitlyn Jenner shitty? Absolutely. But it's indisputable that having.
I don't think it was about though. Okay, so you're trying to say that the identitarian issues, which earlier on you rejected as being the same thing as economic issues, you're trying to say that by way of fighting for an alleviation to identitarian issues, that economic issues will be, in some cases, alleviated as well. But based on the demands that were put forward by the Netflix workers themselves, I don't think that's what the goals of those demands were. I think they were to focus on these identitarian issues. And based on, the class of the Netflix workers who led the walkout themselves, I don't particularly think that they care about the economic issues of working class people.
I don't think that they need to.
Why?
Well, okay. Well, on a personal level, I think everyone needs to on a moral level. But again, the action is not about that kind of thing. I don't think that someone walking to a union meeting that wants to get health insurance applied to their kids or whatever, necessarily needs to also support maybe just making socialized healthcare. If someone is going to, support me in an action, because they want to expand health insurance, but don't think they're that kind of pro-union guy that's like, I work for my health insurance, god dang it. No, you shouldn't get it for, you're that kind of guy, but you still want to go on a picket line with me, and you still want to improve our health insurance plan so that my kid can get covered until they're 30 on that thing. I'm still going to work with you on that, even if you don't agree with other things, right? I think that actions are judged separately than the broader movement. These actions don't necessarily need to be run by people that are super, like ultra communists or whatever, but the actions can still have benefits and gains that are actual progress in directions that do help more oppressed people.
That was interesting for a number of reasons, but I think it's interesting on two main points what you just said, because what you just said recognizes what I was arguing from the start of this conversation, and that being that the Netflix walkout leaders they are part of a different class than working class people due to the fact that they have a different class consciousness and they don't have the same class-based interests as working class people. The second reason why I think that's interesting is because you said I don't think the Netflix workers need to care about the working class, but then you said I think all people morally should care about working class people. But then you went on to go and explain that, like, if PMC or whatever upper echelons of the middle class, whatever you want to call them, do care about the needs of working class people, then you'll accept it where it presents itself. But I think that the only way that we can really achieve collective economic progress in this country, and the only way that collective economic progress, and you can take the New Deal as an example of this, has been achieved in this country in the past, is when, and it's nothing short of a credible threat by way of communists and socialists realigning the interests of the middle class, of the professional managerial class, from neoliberalism to at the least a modest social democracy, right? That's the only way that we can truly bring about economic change, is if the working class is united, but B, if we can get the workers of our economy to realign their neoliberal views by way of credible threat to supporting some of the at least social democratic reforms that we seek to make in this country. And that's exactly what happened during the New Deal. During the New Deal, you had a bunch of communists and socialists who wanted far more aggressive things, I'm sure you know this, than what was eventually brought about in the New Deal. But they were forcing, by way of credible threat, a lot of these like white-collar, professional managerial class, whatever you want to call them, members of this society to not just reject, the identitarian issues that they care about, but to take those hand in hand with fighting for, modest social democratic reforms.
Okay, so we can make judgments on what the best roadmap toward achieving liberation for all oppressed peoples would be. I can see why someone would want to achieve, that, if the goal of, let's assume both of our goals are communism, right? We want to achieve a stateless, classless, moneyless society. That's how I would define
just like some maybe Medicare for all, just social democratic reform.
But I'm just saying, we can let's just, all right, we both approve of Medicare for all, right? So how do we get there? What would be the best way to do that? We can have disagreements on that roadmap, right? I don't think that every action necessarily has to adhere to what my preferred roadmap would be, for it to be a good action. Personally, again, I think all oppressed people should work together to overthrow our oppressors. We need to destroy capitalism once and for all and redistribute the wealth globally to everyone. Everyone, I think, just by nature of being a human, I think all of us collectively own everything on the planet, and we should share that with animals. We should share that with all forms of life. We should all share the planet in peace and harmony. That's my goal, right? And so how do we do that? Well, we need to overthrow capitalism. That's our, I guess, most direct goal. So, but also, what if someone doesn't necessarily want to overthrow capitalism, but they want to knock out something else, like maybe like maybe they don't know. Again, maybe these people are trying to like subvert the working class or something with identity politics, but it still has a net result of making so oppressed peoples are more together. I think that actions don't need to adhere to my best kind of worldview for them to be good actions. There are a lot of protests. I mean, I know you've done protests that I don't necessarily view as valuable or as valuable as they could have been. But that doesn't mean I don't value you protesting. I do protests that a lot of people on the left don't value or say are as valuable as other forms of protest. But I just respect people that do actions as a general principle. I think that not every action needs to...
I don't. I respect actions that are actually going to bring about collective change for the masses, and I respect, I respect actions that are rooted in a sincere care for oppressed people, and I think that I think there's plenty of examples of actions that I don't support, even like self-described like leftist actions that I don't support. I think a lot of like self-described leftist actions are just as someone pointed out in chat, just a bunch of LARPing. I think a lot of people just go out to try and make their voices heard. I don't necessarily think that's like, a fault of their own. I think that we just are so fucking voiceless in this country that people want to go out and scream and want to go out and do shit. But is that really going to change anything? Or are you expending your time, energy, resources, and other people's time, energy, resources, and energy on like some dumb shit that's not going to bring about change?
Okay, so yeah, we can all make those value judgments on what we think the best roadmap is, right? But at the end of the day, it's very difficult and we need as a mass movement, let's say globally, not just in the United States of America, but globally. We want a burgeoning left-wing movement to eventually make its way all over the globe. We want everyone to be communists, right? At least that's my goal, right? And so, like, there are going to be people that have that same goal and maybe place their energy in ways that we view as not, the ideal way to put your energy. But we need to have a much larger movement. We need to have much more connected, politics. We need to get past these things like identity. We need to work together more to even come close to finding out what the best roadmap would even be. Right now, I think we're all working with our best guesses, right? So again, am I necessarily saying that certain tactics are by default good and that I will always support them? Or, there are a lot of protests and demonstrations that people do that I find silly, that I find stupid even. Like, I would even go, like the anti-mandate protests, I think are stupid. I think, first of all, and again, I'm not trying to pivot here, but I'm just placing an example. I think, first of all, being against a mandate for the vaccine, I think that's stupid. The idea of protesting on behalf of that or walking out of your job for that reason, I think is also stupid. But I think, if they, like, a lot of these people do not support communism, right? But if their goal with these actions was to support communism, I would still support it, even though I think it's a stupid way to go about it, right? But my point here is that when people, right,
you think it's a stupid way to go about it because workers in, I believe, Alberta, Canada, have already succeeded in their effort to oppose mandates by way of striking, and workers in New York City who represent 90,000 workers who make up 15 different unions got provisions in place for vaccine mandates by way of collective action. And the police and fire department unions in New York City are still actually in negotiation. So, your argument doesn't even stand up to the precedent of what we've seen in recent weeks. But that's not what we're debating anyways. I don't even really want to get too much into that because
sure.
At the end of the day, what I'm arguing for and what I've argued for this whole time and what you have discredited as a bunch of like niche random definitions is a scientific analysis of our economy that I didn't prescribe or I didn't recognize or analyze myself. It's traditional Marxism. And that's why I think so many leftists in the United States today and so many leftist movements and organizations have been the abysmal failures that they have proven themselves to be because they do not approach these efforts from a scientific standpoint. They approach these efforts from like an idealistic standpoint where they are focusing on like the end goal, but not how to get there. you keep saying that we need to focus on how to get there, but then when I explain that, we have to force by way of credible threat the PMC to support the things that we support, or use the precedent of years past to look at how we can achieve collective economic change in the world today, you say, well, I don't want to talk about that. That's random niche garbage. So like, what is it that you prescribe as like the solution to these issues, if not what I'm saying in the scientific analysis of all this stuff?
Well, okay, I'm going to first of all start my response by saying I don't think like classical Marxism, I don't think that there is a like necessarily scientific analysis of how we abolish capitalism or achieve communism. I don't think that there is settled.
That is like Marxism, though. It's a scientific analysis of capitalism.
I disagree that it's scientific and that inherently makes it more
valuable. Why
valuable.
do you disagree that it's scientific?
Because it's their best take on the situation at the time, right? Now, would I say
can science never be a quote unquote take?
Science typically is, everyone science is, let's start with a theory. A theory is essentially everyone's most common kind of shared best guess, right? I don't think that we have a scientific consensus among all sorts of left-wing people that want to achieve communism. I don't think that there is an extreme...
There's no such thing as like scientific theories?
Well, yeah, yes, a scientific theory is basically something that hasn't been falsified yet.
So, do you recognize that like Marxism is a science, and whether you want to call it a theory or not, it is still a science?
I think you can make a scientific analysis, but I think when you say Marxism is like a scientific theory or something, I think you're placing Marxism as like the only roadmap, like it's some like physical law, like like the only way to reach outer space. I think that that's the implication that you're giving off, and you're placing a big value judgment on the Marxist definitions and terms that isn't necessarily there. People have different forms and roadmaps of achieving communism. People don't necessarily adhere to strictly Marxist beliefs.
It's an explanation of the real world and material reality. And yes, as someone points out in chat, yes, observed phenomenon as well. And it uses all of that to inform the movement. It is scientific.
Well, okay.
It's the most scientific thing we have.
Okay. I mean, I disagree. I'm just going to be honest. I disagree on that.
What do you mean okay, you can't just... What do you mean you disagree? You can't just say that you don't like it, therefore I disagree. You have to put forward an argument.
My argument is that I don't think Marxism as a specific political analysis or roadmap is inherently more valuable than anyone else that wants to achieve the same goal. Now, we can say, right, we can say that Marxism is possibly the best analysis that we have right now. I would say maybe not. I mean, Marxism doesn't, view automation as a good thing, for example. There's other... You
recognize there can be like combating scientific theories, though, for any issue and any solution in the world.
And my point, though,
why are you saying that it's not scientific? Because even if you don't think it's the best, or even if you do think it's the best, it doesn't mean it isn't scientific by virtue of that.
I think that I'm personally making a statement on your implication that Marxism is the only path that matters, and if your action or demonstration or strike or protest or whatever doesn't fall within the roadmap of Marxism specifically, that it's less valuable. I'm saying that is a purely I don't find Marxism more valuable than some other strategy or action. I don't think that invalidates an action based on identity.
But that doesn't invalidate that it's scientific. I'm just getting at this because you said it wasn't scientific, so I'm just curious
I'm saying that in a rhetorical sense. Yeah, I said your focus on Marxism as a scientific theory, I think, was a rhetorical mishap. I think you're placing undue emphasis on its importance or value.
Well, so you can make that argument. But you can't make the argument that it's not scientific.
Sure, I guess.
You concede it is scientific.
Anything is scientific. Yeah, depending on how.
True.
That's not true. Okay. Well, What are you looking for here?
You just said something that was blatantly false, so I wanted to call you out on it and prove that you were wrong.
Yeah, I am saying, rhetorically speaking, you can use terms like theory, for example, has a different definition rhetorically versus like scientifically, right? Words can have different meanings and ways that you emphasize them. I'm saying, right, that emphasizing the science of Marxism, you're placing undue value on it. Am I saying it's not scientific per se because, blah, blah, blah? Personally, I don't think it is science. Like, it's more philosophical, but you can say philosophy is science and, they share a lot of common overlapping, right? I'm not making a definitional argument against the term scientific. I'm saying your rhetorical focus on it as being a scientific theory. I think it's unfounded. I think that it's a little ridiculous to claim anything that isn't directly benefiting the roadmap of Marxism isn't valuable. I think value
to do that. You could. That's not what I said either. But you don't have to say. I'm just for future reference. You don't have to say that it's not scientific. That if someone's arguing in defense of Marxism, you don't have to say it's not scientific.
Well, I didn't attend high school debate class, so I don't have all
that. You don't have to say it's not scientific. You could just instead propose a different scientific theory or analysis to counter their argument.
Yeah, again, I say things, I'm down to extrapolate on things, but I don't personally care about the, nabbing definitional gotchas. Like, I'm having a conversation. Right, so again, I think maybe, I guess. But again, I think I clarified that I was speaking specifically about your rhetorical use of the term Marxism here. Now, again, I think you can say philosophy is a science and anything. It depends on
you're the one who's trying to get at definitional gotchas because I was the one who put forward an argument, and I think I offhandedly may have even said scientific, and then you're the one who tried to press me on that it wasn't scientific.
That's possible. I honestly don't remember how we got into this conversation, to be honest with you. I'm what I was doing is I was probably interjecting to try to make you understand my point, on a more grander scale, is that one, Marxism isn't more valuable or more correct than another left-wing analysis of the economy, the world, etc. Marxism isn't like a gold standard. It's not it's not inherently more valuable. And it also, something doesn't need to be explicitly Marxist for it to be a good action in and of itself. Like, you can say an action isn't as good as it could be, and that's very possible. But to say that it's not valuable because it doesn't follow an explicitly Marxist guideline, I think is silly. And that's what I'm trying to point at here. I'm not trying to get into a definitional master class here.
Okay, well, Marxism, first of all, doesn't have a set definition. It's an analysis of capitalism and other economic models that we have today. And it is, it's a continued movement to try and change things. So I guess I would ask you, what is your alternative? What would you suggest if not Marxism? And also, I would push back on the notion that, I'm calling out certain protests as not being inherently Marxist, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying that certain protests in certain direct actions are dumb because they don't achieve anything, and in some cases, they do more by way of serving the needs and interests of the owning class or the managerial class than they do the working class, which is the premise of my argument surrounding the Netflix walkout.
All right. Okay, so now, again, I think that the divisions, saying that things I think what this really boils down to be honest, is that I do think that it's good to advocate for change when it comes to trans issues. I think that helping trans people participate in society at a more equal rate necessarily is Marxist in its value, because it breaks down barriers and builds solidarity between all oppressed people. I think that I think that this whole conversation, the whole reason why I wanted to have this conversation was to give the trans perspective more of a platform. I think the ideas of these divisions, I think while we have people that are Republicans, right? Imagine you're working class and you vote for Donald Trump. Like, that's a disease of the mind. Imagine thinking that that is okay, right? I think that what we need to do is we need to change people, right?
I think it's a disease of the mind.
What?
I think you're discounting a lot of working class people if you think their support for Trump is a disease of the mind.
I think supporting Biden is also a disease of the mind.
I don't necessarily think that either.
I think the idea that someone's solution, Trump in 2020, right, after he publicly took credit.
People vote for someone because they see them as a solution to all their problems.
I don't think so either.
So why are you saying that it's a disease of the mind if they vote for one person or another?
I specifically said support. But my point.
Don't you think vote is a de facto support? I
do not agree.
De facto support.
I don't agree that voting and supporting are equivalent. But my point here is that there are people that think that voting for Trump or participating in Trumpism or believing in that kind of culture war side, right? Those are a lot of the people that Dave Chappelle's Netflix special is appealing to. If you look at I'm going to make a comment on your chat room because I see it on your Discord camera there. It's a little distracting. There are several people in your chat over the course of this conversation that have used transphobic slurs against me, that have, tried to dead name me or misgender me.
Anyone who did should be banned, and we have mods who are really great and try to, counter that as much and ban those people as much as possible.
And that's great. But my point here is,
that is not reflective of the community. And I honestly, I've been looking at chat a little bit here and there. I've been trying to focus on this discussion, but from what I've seen, I haven't seen that. But they should be banned and removed from the community if they are.
But yeah, so my point though is that I don't think if people need to break down these barriers, right? We need to stop attacking each other over identity. It's just silly, right? The idea that someone can support policies like trans people shouldn't be allowed to use a bathroom, gay people shouldn't allowed to adopt children or shouldn't allowed to marry, those issues, yes, they are social issues. People like to make social and class different analyses or different axes. Personally, I think they are inextricably linked, right? We need to change people, right, to stop, let's say, hating certain kinds of people with certain skin colors, certain kinds of people with certain gender identities, certain people who dress a certain way, people with certain kind of religious beliefs necessarily, people with certain kind of sexual orientations. We need to stop with those divisions, and that, I think, is going to be it's inextricably linked. It's not that one, social issues are more important than economic issues, or it's not a battle. It's that they're inextricably linked. So if we have people, right, and again, I'm just saying that there may be right-wing people that are listening to the show, right, that think the trans issues are bad.
I'm not arguing that. No one here is arguing that.
No, I'm not necessarily, I'm not making a value judgment I'm just commenting on the idea that it's possible, right? So I'm getting my perspective out, right? I think that, again, they're inextricably linked.
I'm just going to say, I've made a solid effort not to strawman in this conversation. I don't even know where this conversation's at now. I don't think it's directly relevant to what we were initially saying. I also, stand against and oppose, bigoted opinions, policies, statements, whatever, all bigoted things against trans people. We're in total agreement there. I don't know. Do you have anything more to say about the essence of this argument?
Yeah, the essence of the argument, again, is that not every action needs to be a very generalized action for the lowest common denominator. Actions can have palpable value in the struggle of oppressed people to, fight oppression. And that value doesn't necessarily need to be on an axis of social versus class. I think that the gains that could have been made and are being made in people like having a broader conversation and an inclusive conversation with trans people based on this culture war subject, I think are good things. Breaking barriers of division such as racism, bigotry, etc. is good. We need to change people in a positive direction. And again, you need to do that on economic issues. Like, why would a poor person be against student debt cancellation? Why? I paid my way or whatever when college was 6,000% cheaper or whatever back in the 1960s, right? But why? We need to change them. We need everyone to move on all of these issues when we can. And I don't think that any action can benefit that specific cause. Like, I don't think the Black Lives Matter movement necessarily means that we can't focus on, the working conditions for all people. It just means, hey, black people are getting disproportionately shot by police, right? Treated differently. We need to maybe put a little bit of focus into that problem, make that problem more part of the national conversation, move people on that subject, and then, another subject may eventually take over the social consciousness, etc. I don't think any of these subjects is necessarily I don't think that talking about trans issues puts class issues in the back burner. I don't think talking about class issues put social issues on the back burner. But again, the start of this conversation was when you specifically were saying that Netflix Walkout was getting more media and that's a bad thing, or that they're parasites. And I saw that as you downplaying the value.
They did get more media attention. I think you pointed out earlier that they weren't fighting for any sort of like an economic, they weren't fighting economic grievances. They were fighting identitarian grievances. And you saw how in many cases, you said you saw how in many cases that economic grievances outweigh the grievances of identitarian issues. And yes, they are without a doubt 110% parasitic. The Netflix workers are parasitic. Do you have any last things to say, though, before I give my last statement?
Well, first of all, I just fundamentally disagree with putting class and social issues in different categories. I think they're inextricably.
You said that they're different things, though, earlier. I don't mean to interrupt, but you did say they were different things earlier.
Yes, they are. They are literally different issues. Yes, but they're inextricably linked in the fight against capitalism.
So why do you think the Netflix workers weren't inextricably fighting for both things? They were just fighting for identitarian issues.
The fundamental fact that they are trying to, and their goal was to push people in a direction that is more accepting of trans people, necessarily pushes a broader left-wing movement because it allows more people to more equally participate in more aspects of society. In the same way that like building more ramps at restaurants and buildings makes things more accessible for people with wheelchairs so that they can maybe go to that building, get a position there, or maybe go to that restaurant more easily, and they're more able to participate in that form of society, and that will necessarily increase other people. Like it's all one struggle, right? That's my point. But as far as the statement goes, I personally found this conversation to be enjoyable. Maybe you disagree. I apologize that it took us so long to have this conversation. It might have been a little easier if we did it when it was more fresh in our brains as possible. I'm open to more conversations if we would discuss anything else. I think, again, we need to stop viewing these things on opposing lenses.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I found the conversation enjoyable, maybe in a different way than you did. I thought your arguments were nonsensical. You argued all over the place. You didn't follow like a single common line of thinking in any one of your arguments. You contradicted yourself like dozens of times in every single argument you put forward. I too recognize that identitarian issues and economic or class issues are different things. I also recognize that they are not inextricably linked. And I think the example I brought up earlier is the example of unions and the fact that you have so many on the left today who claim to be supportive of, addressing the grievances surrounding identitarian issues and also class-based issues. Yet when approached to address class-based issues with people who have different viewpoints and worldviews on identitarian issues, they will refuse. The leftist white-collar, workers, they will refuse to work with people, or even leftist, working class people will refuse to work with people who have a different worldview on identitarian issues. And I think that's a huge problem. And I also, just in summary, think that, again, being offended by someone's comedy special is not a workers' rights issue. The Team Trans that organized the walkout specifically stated that the main goal of this was to show their opposition for Dave Chappelle's special. And you even said that at the start of this debate, that it was about a collective movement to voice opposition to Dave Chappelle's transphobic special.
And that's bad.
Netflix workers...
criticizing a comedian is bad? Is that the take here?
It's just different from a workers' rights issue. I think you can criticize anyone. I'm criticizing the workers themselves who are leading the walkout. Netflix workers, though, who led this walkout, are in no way, shape, or form working class. You acknowledge that, but you failed to present any sort of classification as to what class they are part of. And you rejected the notion that I put forward that they're part of the professional managerial.
Did you write all of this down and you're reading all of them like a receipt or something?
No, this is just what I'm saying.
I mean, I think that this whole point scoring thing is just so
we just had a very long conversation.
Yeah, I think the whole point scoring is just silly. I don't understand what points you're trying to score, why you're trying to score them.
4 points. I'm trying to show that I won the debate.
There was no winner. I didn't know we were. Again, is this high school debate? We're winning and losing?
No, it's a YouTube show. It's not high school debate.
Yeah, but you're treating it like it's like a fucking boxing match, bro. It's weird. You didn't win anything.
Sure. I mean, I don't really care how you want to label it, but you're wrong. And you're wrong on all these issues, and you failed to put forward arguments.
So
yes.
I disagree. I disagree that I was wrong. I'm sorry.
Let me go on to explain.
All right. Okay.
Okay. The Netflix workers, I mean, they're not a part of the professional managerial class. PMC can hold progressive politics, but they don't always necessarily hold progressive politics. And when they do, either doing so consciously or unconsciously, it's usually on identitarian issues. And they're doing so, at the end of the day, to create a net positive ramification for the managerial and owning class rather than the working class and addressing their grievances surrounding economic issues. PMC creatives hold the role of pushing mass consumerist, cultural exceptions, and I think they also serve as, PMC creatives serve as a position within the economy as the architects of cultural hegemony. And they basically craft and manipulate what becomes the cultural norm in our country. And I think, again, in short summary, the walkout demands that were listed by the Netflix workers to address that in particular, they reflect essentially are the ethos of a model employee who is trying to make a workplace that's consistent with a low-stress human resources department.
I say try to explain that to anyone who's not terminally online, and they will look at you funny because none of that shit matters. And hating people that are workers because they make too much money or you think that they're doing something that you don't like or whatever, I think that's silly. I think anyone that does any action that furthers their agenda is a good thing. So that's just my opinion. I value
to explain it to anyone who's not terminally online because at the end of the day, the Netflix workers. Only 28 of them showed up for the protest. So your argument in the real world has failed. And anyway, thank you for coming on the show. And,
all right, but the real world doesn't just amount to one moment in time. We're in a future world.
Andrea, what has this whole debate been about?
It's been about whether or not the action for trans people, about trans people for the Netflix is a good action, or if it's parasitical.
What action?
The action of the walkout.
So it was about one specific instance.
Yeah, I mean, again, but that doesn't. It's not only judged on that. You literally just said three. There's an after. There's effects.
I'm done here. Is there anything else you want to say? Because again, even in your closing statement, you're still contradicting yourself.
I mean, there's no if you think I'm contradicting myself, that's an opinion.
You just did.
When?
You just said it wasn't about one specific issue, and then you said, well, it was about one specific issue.
What is it?
This entire 2-hour conversation we just had
was about the action and whether or not the action had went. The action itself happens, and then there's the results of the action.
The results of the action were 28 people showed up.
That's not that, and then time stops, and then no one reads about it online. We're having this
about that one action. It was an all-out failure. They said they were going to have over 1,000 people there.
Okay.
Then the day of, they said hundreds of people were going to be there. Then they said that the day of only 28 people showed up. That's a failure. There was like 5 times as many cameras and press crew people there than actual workers. It was an all-out failure.
Okay, all right.
The internet has cited against...
Again, that doesn't mean that the action itself is bad or has a bad effect. The action may be not as good as they wanted it to be. That's perfectly acceptable for that to happen. That doesn't mean that the message is all of a sudden bad. That doesn't mean that the message is at the expense of workers. It doesn't mean that the message of the action is bad. There can be sometimes someone like follows Kirsten Sinema in the bathroom and yells at her. And there are only 3 people there. Does that mean that they shouldn't have done that? Does that mean that the action didn't accomplish anything? Well, it went viral online and millions of people saw the clip. So maybe that action and the results of it
Here's the final point. Were the protesters who were going into the bathroom with Kirsten Sinema, were they expecting thousands of people to go in the bathroom with Kirsten Sinema, or were they expecting
not relevant.
People?
That's not relevant. Those are just pure. That's just organizational plan. No one cares about that, though.
Irrelevant. The Netflix workers had an explicit framework of set goals. They were telling the media there was going to be over 1,000 people there, and there was 28 people there.
Yeah, some people tell people things, they predict things, and they're wrong. That doesn't have anything to do with the value. It's not a failure. It's not winning and losing and failures. Like Medicare for all failed, forcing the vote failed, ending wars failed. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't have been accomplished. That doesn't mean people fighting for those things weren't in the right. Yes, they failed.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that they shouldn't have been fighting.
But you're saying the action is a failure.
I said it was a failure. I didn't say they shouldn't have fought for those things.
Based on the action itself and not the results. The point of action is to get change. You don't just go out, do an action, and then go...
They didn't win.
What didn't they win?
The special's still up.
But they didn't ask for it to be removed.
They put forward in the demands.
They didn't ask for it to be removed, so it doesn't matter.
But they had a bunch of other demands. It's a failure, Andrea. It's a failure. Force the vote, sure, was a failure. The Green New Deal push was a failure. They're all failures.
And does that mean that the action itself doesn't move the needle in a direction? Does that mean it shouldn't have been done? Does that mean that the action inherently and intrinsically sucking away, value from the working class or economic rights?
I think that the Netflix walkout made the effort that I don't necessarily disagree with some of the things that were put forward in the set list of demands, right? You didn't hear me say that once in today or in any of my commentary. I actually went through the whole thing on stream and I was like, yeah, I agree with this, I agree with this, I agree with this. I never said that. I'm just saying it was a failure, and I actually think that the Netflix workers who led the walkout, based on how much of hypocritical, parasitical, classist, racist assholes they are, did more harm for their cause than actually did good. And that's all I got to say. So, thank you for coming on the stream. It was a pleasure having you, and I'm sure we'll talk again one day. Peace.
All right, bud. Oh my Lord, have mercy. Hold the phone. I'll give y'all some little post-com. Just give me a sec. So folks, man, I gotta be honest. That was brutal. I'm gonna be honest, folks. Dealing with that was pretty brutal. So I'm gonna be honest, I don't didn't really care about anything he said. So, and again, I'm just being very honest with y'all. I wasn't listening to half of the, like, so whenever I was responding, right, I didn't care about what he was saying because I found all of this shit that he was saying was boring and it made no sense. And it's just like, he's trying to, the whole conversation was bizarre. Like, I don't even think we talked about what we intended on talking about at all. And the audio, I'm going to be honest, folks, I was a little distracted because he has his chat, like, on the camera on Discord, right? He doesn't, like, broadcast his camera to Discord and then pick up the camera on his show. He broadcasts his show page to Discord. So I was reading his chat, and the chat was horrible, man. My lord. I get scared whenever Marxism is treated more like a doctrine or religion. One has to be one. Yeah, that's the point I was trying to get across. Yeah, I mean, the fact that he felt like he had to own you at the end to set everything. I mean, yeah, I wasn't scoring points. I didn't give a shit. I was just trying to, like, penetrate the audience of the guy that, or the kind of person that watches Jackson Hinkle. I was just trying to get to an audience member. Because that's all I care about. That's the goal. Like, if I can get one person in that chat room to think about something that I said and change their opinion for the better, then that's a win. That's all I care about. That's all I care about. I'm going to be honest. That's all I fucking care about. And I think based on that goal, that maybe I got a couple people to think about my perspective. I think. But I mean, that's it. That's, like, I knew that the guy was kind of weird. Like, I'm aware of his weirdness. But yeah, his, like, little weird point scoring thing at the end was just, that was weird. I mean, that's strange. Like, that's not like someone saying, I won the debate. That's weird to say. You know, like, that's like Trump. Like, I hate it. I know. No, hear me out. It's like Trump. Like, I won this debate by a lot. Like, it's literally like, it's like, who cares about your commentary on the debate? Your commentary, like, you aren't necessarily biased because you want to win. So of course you're going to project that you're winning. Like, so it's like your commentary is useless. Like, we don't need your commentary. But yeah, I mean, I had fun. I'm gonna be honest. I had fun. So I enjoy. I'm glad that he let me on for 2 hours. I wanna talk about that as well. I'm grateful that he let me on his show for 2 hours, where I was able to talk about trans issues in some kind of way. I'm grateful to that. 2 hours. I mean, my thing is, I'm really good, especially when I'm high. I'm really good at just kind of, like, rambling. And so I'm glad that I managed to have him actually listen to me for 2 hours. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I consider that a win. Like, I don't care about his commentary. I don't care about him being rude. I knew he was going to be rude. When someone sent me the clip of him saying, no one has the balls to come, I knew from the jump, this guy is a rude motherfucker. He's been rude to me in DMs. You know when he messaged me to set up? You know when he actually set up for the stream and, like, checked in with me? I shit you not. Like, he added me on Discord. Added me as a friend because he didn't do it before or wasn't set up at all and ignored my thing when I gave it to him. He had, like, literally 5 minutes before the stream started. That's why I would have set up the stream ahead of time, but I was honestly expecting him to bail. I thought he was going to bail because he didn't message me at all. Again, like, the same thing we talked about. And so I don't know why. I don't know. It's weird. I mean, the debate bro thing is weird. So my whole thing, I just tried to get it. I tried to get a little philosophical. I tried to like get people to think about specific kind of things and how, like, you know, I just that all my goal again is to just to have one person. If one person changes their opinion for the better, everything else doesn't matter to me. My GF is a defense attorney, and she said it reminded her of how good it feels when she pisses off an officer in court. If you're saying that that's how I should feel good about making Jackson upset, then yeah, I mean, I do. I think it's a profound and very satisfying event that says a lot about character when someone freaks the fuck out. So my strategy when debating people is typically, I'll be honest, I've freaked out on a debate at some, you know, I've gotten really triggered. Who hasn't, right? Like, I mean, who hasn't? We all get triggered every once in a while, right? But again, when you get triggered at a debate, like, there's like, I mean, again, if you're kind of like, you know, if there for the spectacle, you like when people get triggered, you might think that that's like showing strength or whatever. But if you're a regular person, you just view them as silly. So I try to be. What if Hinkle persuaded your viewers to become Nazballs? I don't think that's possible. Torrentile Rage, my audience that I have cultivated, and again, I say this because I love my viewers. I think the people that watch this stream on my channel that follow me and aren't like hate watchers or anything, the people that like, they understand enough about me. I think I've developed I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm going to be honest. I think I've developed a relationship with enough of people. I don't, you know, not trying to get too creepy or anything, but I think that people know enough about me, about what I think, about why I think it, and they can agree or not. You know, I don't think anyone's going to get shifted because he didn't present a thesis. You know, he didn't present like a worldview. Like, I tried to inject my worldview into it. I tried to say that we all need to stop hating each other. Division is not like being, you know, identity politics is not when a trans person says, hey, please don't shoot my sister. Identity politics is when someone kills a trans person. That's identity. That's the when someone commits a hate crime, when someone discriminates, that's when the identity politics occurs. And I think I got that across. Now, maybe, again, I was pretty high. I'm going to be honest. So I was tuning out for a lot when he was going on his little rambles, right? I'm going to be honest. I'm just being 100%, right? But I don't think he didn't sound like he was projecting much, like of a worldview other than like Marxism is like a scientific physical theory of the universe. So I thought it was strange. I thought the whole debate, or I guess, you know, I thought the whole thing was strange. I'm going to be honest. Gonna be honest. I'm curious, is he still, like, streaming? Like, does anyone know, is he doing, like, his own, like, post-commentary or some shit? Like, because I would love to, like, look into it. I would love to look into it. Because I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's, like, high-quality content. I would assume. Anyway. Oh no, okay. So he stopped streaming? Oh yeah, I forgot that his stream fucked up for like half an hour. So maybe some of my best moments maybe they fell through the cracks. Election. I don't think that they should necessarily be forced. Oh yeah, this whole VOD is ruined. Ah, shit. I don't know, man. Maybe I did waste my time. This motherfucker doesn't even know how to stream. What a world. But yeah, oh yeah, I forgot he was on Twitch too. But yeah, so I don't go into these kind of debates thinking that I'm gonna like. I'm not looking for viral clips. I know people have suggested that I try to get viral clips with him. I'm not looking for viral clips. I'm not looking to get points. I'm not trying to like win and like it's Rocky. Like, you know, like I'm not Rocky. I'm not Ivan Drago. I'm not, you know, any of those guys. Like I'm gonna be honest. It's just fun. I'm gonna be honest. It's fun. I'm going to be very honest with you. I love talking to stupid people. Now, again, I know my show is about stupid people. I would say that I talk about stupid people. Like, as a group, I talk about... imagine this, folks. Imagine. I went on Jackson Hinkle's show, and I said publicly that Republicans are fucking stupid. Like, I feel good about that. Because I know he's got a lot of Republicans in his audience. And so I know... those people hearing those things who like, you know, might claim to be like, I thought, you know, that's a win for me. Like, I love making fun of stupid people. I'm going to be honest. But at the same time, you know, I want people to not be so stupid, you know? So, you know, I don't know. I forgot where that sentence was going because I'm really high. Yeah, the insulting was strange. And also, like, the whole thing was strange. I'm going to be honest. Like, I could see him, and maybe I'm wrong. It's possible that I'm wrong. But I could see him, like, with his eyeballs, like, reading something when he was going through, like, his list of owns. You know, the list of fucking owns when he owned me? I got epic owned. So, like, when he made that list of owns, like, I could see him. And maybe it was just that, you know, sometimes I'm spacing out when I'm talking. It's possible, right? But how did you feel in the moment? Oh, I was just making funny faces. Because, like, I can't, like, he wouldn't let me speak. So what I did, because my camera's just open on the stream the whole time, I was just making funny faces. So I was just having fun with that. Like, when he was, like, you know, saying, you were wrong on this, I owned you on this, I was like, I get, you know, whatever. You know, I'm funny. I try to be funny. Maybe I fail to be funny. It's possible. But if they don't like my comedy, if they didn't like my humor and the way I expressed myself, I don't know why they're trying to cancel a comedian. And so, hey, I was just trying to make people laugh on that one. Is he an actual communist? I mean, I can't make a definitive judgment on what an actual communist is. That being said, I think there's two possible judgments that one could make. If he's a grifter, like he lies on purpose for money or whatever, or if he's genuinely stupid. Because he's not that bright. I'm not trying to be rude. I know I hate, you know, I'm just kidding. I love personally insulting people. But that being said, he's not that bright, right? So the options are he's genuinely stupid, but he's like very highly intelligent when it comes to a specific, very, very niche line of thinking. He knows all the buzzwords. He knows all the definitions. He knows all the specific, you know, psychological tactics. He knows how to project strength and do he knows all those things in that specific field, and that's the debate bro field, right? So he's very good at that one specific line of thinking, but, you know, he's not, so it's, you know, it's very possible he's just genuinely stupid, or that he's doing it for money. And it's hard to tell. I personally have a default assumption that if you are having Jimmy Dore on your show, you're doing things for money. That's just my opinion. And if that's the case, then he's not a communist. But if he actually strives to achieve communism, but he's just really stupid, I would say you can maybe call him a communist, but a very stupid one. And a very stupid person can do a lot of bad things for a movement. It's very true that you can set a movement back by being very stupid. And that's my problem with the so-called working class. I think people that are working class that spend their time hating trans people are stupid. I think they're fucking stupid. I think if you are a poor person and instead of attacking your boss, instead of attacking capitalism, instead of attacking rich people, you attack a trans person, a gay person, a black person, an Asian person, whatever the fuck. If you attack immigrants, if you attack, non-binary people, like, if you, like, and you are a poor person, you're fucking stupid. That's another message I wanted to get across. I think you're dumb as fuck. And I have no problem with telling working class people that they're stupid. I don't. In the same way, I don't have a problem telling rich people that they're stupid. I don't have a problem telling PMCs that they're whatever the fuck that means, by the way. Like, imagine you're in a bar and you're like, oh, the fucking PMCs are not actually part of the proletariat. Oh, yeah. They're going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? No one knows what the fuck PMC means. And I tried to get that point across again. But, there are a lot of people that are fucking stupid. I can't stomach anyone doing okay who claims to be a leftist and doesn't side with workers. Now, again, I'm very upfront that I do not think that there's any validity at all with anti-mandate or anti-vaccine strikes and protests. I'm going to be honest. That is a giant red line for me when it comes to siding with workers on these kinds of subjects. That is a giant red line. I think you're a dumb fuck motherfucker if you try to quit your job because, oh, the goddamn man, like, yes, it's your opinion. You're right, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Fuck that stupid shit. I think it's stupid. Right? So in that specific instance. But again, if workers are demanding that trans people have a seat at the table when the company makes decisions that affect trans people, that is directly a worker issue because the worker is demanding an increase of fairness, equality. They're getting a higher position from, they're having a seat at the table. They're able to intervene. They're able to interject at least a little bit. And you can make a value judgment on how good that is, but at least they're trying to gain something. Los, I know you're a dumb fuck motherfucker, but if you in any way helped this pandemic continue to this point, I think you're stupid. I've heard Chomsky talk about that in just the general subject. But yeah, I just think, again, it's a branding exercise. Like, again, I don't participate. I don't participate in this world in a way. Yes, all people, especially if I'm branding myself in some way. Yes, but my brand is I'm not a Machiavellian thinker. I'm not thinking I'm going to say this on this platform. I'm going to say that at that time in this way, and then I'm not about that. My brand is myself. But a lot of people brand themselves as like the ultra communist. Like, that's your brand. I'm the one true communist. I'm the super uber Marxist Leninist commie, like, super duper hero. And that's their brand. And so their brand isn't themselves. It's something that they strive to be. And people should strive to be things that they view as good. So it's possible, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But in this instance, when you are trying to play up certain things or whatever for the sake of your brand, I have a problem with that. Also, folks, I just forgot. Did we not get him didn't he say on the record force the vote was a failure? Thank you for reminding me, Daniel. Didn't he literally say the words force the vote was a failure? Can someone clip that? I'm pretty sure he said that verbatim, that force the vote was a failure. Because if he did, please, someone go back and find the timestamp when this stream is over. Send it to me. Please, please. If you send it to me by tomorrow morning, I will shout you the fuck out. Because I'm not going to do anything else, right? But Lord, yeah, I take it all back. I did it for branding. Old Dave, you have a new subscriber. Thank you. Thank you. See, I mean, again, my thing, again, another factor of me debating someone like Jackson Hinkle, even though I know I'm not going to make his, again, is if more people hear that I debated or like I get any sort of recognition anywhere, and again, if I can get one person to listen to something I have to say, I consider more people listening to what I have to say as a win, and then I consider people taking anything that I say seriously as a win. I consider that a win as well. So, just thought I'd talk about that. Like, yes, Shireen, pitting income equality versus identity equality is like asking whether black people or Jewish people suffered more. It's just a bad question. Both forms of suffering are bad. It's not this. Yes, can you make, if you really just want to, like, you're Dave Rubin, you're thinking about high-level ideas, man, like, what really was worse, right? Like, slavery or the Holocaust. Oh, let's find the answer to this question. But that's weird. That's a weird thing. But if that's what you're doing in your spare time, if you're trying to like make a fun YouTube video or something and you're doing a thought experiment, okay, it's a weird one, but that's a whole separate issue from, the idea that that's how we should participate in society as a whole and judge every action by. You know what I mean? When you're judging every action by if it's this versus that versus that versus this versus that, that's weird. Like, that's just weird, I don't, it's strange. Like it has, like, it's a weird thing to do when not doing like a thought experiment. Like if you're writing an essay, and you're trying to like, whoa, and then someone would, whatever, then maybe, but I used to follow Jackson for the AOC bashing, but it has turned into a commie Marxist crap recently. Now again, I'm a communist. Like, and that's why one of the things that I wanted to do in that conversation was define communism as a moneyless, stateless, classless society, right? That means abolishing hierarchies. That means like white supremacy is as bad as rich people and workers or bosses exploiting workers. You can make, which one is, blah, 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 blah. But they are both forms of hierarchical structures of power. And communism is abolishing all forms of hierarchy. And it's just, you can't. And I brought up, the New Deal. Was that very economically beneficial? Yeah. To white people? Sal, you're in for a doozy? DB Cooper, I'm glad you're here. Can you do me a favor and watch my entire debate? You'll love it. It's two lefties being dumb. It's both SJW woke libtards just being stupid, right? You'll love it. But can you give me an essay on how you feel about my performance in particular? I would love your opinion. I'm asking as a fan. I'm your fan. I love when you talk about me, DB Cooper. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just being honest. I enjoy it. So if you would do me that favor, I would love it. Yeah, that's right. The dropout wants to be taken seriously. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I would have set up the stream earlier, but he didn't message me until like 10 minutes or so before the debate started. So I was thinking that he wasn't gonna make it again. But he then messaged me at like 6:58 or some shit, and we set it up. So but I didn't want to make the stream and then take it down. But maybe I should have just done that anyway. I don't know. No, I don't drink milk. I drank from water gallon. The tap water in my city is horrible. I mean, I appreciate the grouping of myself in there, Patty. That's nice. Ekim, how does he qualify Netflix workers as PMC? What the fuck does that even mean? That was my point the entire debate. My point was that no one gives a fuck about what that means, and that is only a branding exercise for terminally online morons that want to win a debate. What happens when you win the debate? Oh, I won the debate. The debate, I won. Right? What? I care more about the struggles of oppressed people than I care about winning a debate. Oh, I won. Yeah. I won the goddamn debate. Like, that's not necessarily what I'm interested in. But, you know. I'm doing an epic tweet, folks, because Jackson Nichols subtweeted me. So this is me writing. Well, that was me. It's over. But it was me writing an epic tweet. So, you know. So I wrote an epic tweet. And I demand, I'm going to be honest, folks. I'm not going to lie. I demand people interact with the tweet in a positive fashion. That's just going to, it's a requirement. I got how many viewers? Like 40 something? 48, 52. Okay, okay. If I don't get 52 likes on that tweet, I might stop the stream. I'm not going to lie. Hey, and I don't mean to be that person, but I might stop the stream if I don't get 52 likes on that tweet. So, hey, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Just throwing that out there, folks. It's a retweet. Debates are competition, and competition is a capitalist value that is antithetical to a socioeconomic harmony. I do agree with that. However, I don't think it's necessarily bad to have like in the form of sport or fun or play or like, you know, so if it's like, if I go in there, we go in there and we're doing like a debate, like that's why I compared it to like high school debate class. We are trying to like win a debate based on appealing to a certain judge and their particulars and then forming your arguments. So, right, there's like a metric, there's a goal, there's like a way to win. If it's a sport, that's one thing. But this wasn't a sport. This was like an ideological conversation and a value judgment on an event that occurred and how its reaction in society is, changed based on, right? And so there's no, in order to win something, there must be a goal. There must be a metric that you can compare people against. And if that metric is not, like if I pick up a rock, it's like that episode of SpongeBob, right? Where, hear me out, where they're all like, where like SpongeBob and Patrick are like playing chess or whatever, but they're not playing by the rules, and they're throwing rocks at each other in bubbles, and then they're breaking Squidward's windows and jumping into trees. And then like Squidward yells out the window, hear me out, and says, what are you two doing? And then they're both like, I don't know. Like, that's basically what Jackson Hinkle was doing. He's basically SpongeBob and Patrick in that episode of SpongeBob where that thing I just described occurred, right? Just aimlessly, like, making progress, like blowing a bubble, throwing a rock, jumping out of a tree, and then accomplishing made-up goals in real time, and then, but there was no, like, a competition is like if I'm playing Slayer in Halo, and, the goal of Slayer is to kill your opponent in the video game, and, like, if you get 5 kills, you win. And then by winning, you would achieve the 5 kills. That's a goal. That is a set goal that you understand, right? So, and then you achieve that goal. You cannot win. It would be like if I threw a rock at your face and then said, I win. Well, what did you win? Well, I threw the rock at your face. You're injured. Well, yeah, but what did you win? What? So it's weird, and it's a weird impulse. Very weird impulse, I must say. But yeah, and I do, I know that there's stupid people that watch my stream. But again, I take value in that. Because imagine this, right? A dumb fuck motherfucker is spending their time listening to what I have to say instead of watching bullshit like Fox News or Jackson Hinkle or Jimmy Dore or Tucker Carlson or any, or fucking Ben Shapiro. Just the sheer, fact that they're spending their time on me, I view that as a win. That's money and ads and clicks and hits away from people that I don't like and in my direction, right? Because YouTube, the way the algorithm works is you gain no matter what. Every time a right-winger calls me dumb or says capitalism is wah, 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 whenever people do that, I win. I get more views because they're watching the stream. I get more engagement, so I go up in the search results and the algorithms, and my videos get tagged to search terms more. So oh, hell yes, Zeke. Hell yes, Zeke. Let me know when it's there and tag me in it. And again, I have no problem with calling poor people stupid if they're genuinely stupid. I'm sorry. I think, and again, the rich people, the ruling class, they're not watching my show. They're not watching Jackson Hinkle's show. But there's a lot of stupid people that might listen to something that I say and might, think about something a little bit, If someone is so busy with their hatred of gay people that they vote against their own economic best interest, they're dumb. And it's okay to call them dumb. Personally, I think, anyway. And I said that specifically also because he mentioned that because one of the organizers supported Elizabeth Warren in the primary, that was like a point against her. Like, Elizabeth Warren was stupid. Like, anyone who supported her was dumb. But you can be dumb on something and evolve. You can, like that, you know, like, and that's the point. We're judging on that action. I don't care. Like, she could have said any stupid thing, but if she changed her perspective and if she's making progress or gains or getting a platform for oppressed peoples, that's good. This just said coping with losing a debate. I hope you have a good night, though. All the best. I'm coping like a motherfucker, man. You don't even know. You talk lots of smack on Twitter. I don't think I did talk smack and make multiple videos about Jackson Hinkle and then embarrass yourself. Hey, I hope I embarrassed myself. I'm a comedian. You know, the whole point is like I'm a clown. So if you are laughing and you think you're laughing at my expense, okay. It's a win. This is what happens when ideology turns into ideologue. Absolutely. But, you know, what are you going to do? I drank, like, some pretty strong coffee when the stream started, so I'm kind of awake. So, you know, I guess I'll stop the stream, though. But yeah, I'm going to be, like, another thing is I want to talk about their chat. This guy's chat was, like, extremely bigoted. Like, very, like, I'm not going to lie, I was genuinely surprised. Like, I knew I would go in there and get that, like, super bigoted trash. Like, I knew it would be there in some variety. But I was genuinely pretty surprised at the extreme amount of people just copy pasting just like actual garbage, you know? And then when he claimed he didn't see it, like, I'm glad that I got him on record saying that he's against bigotry. That's fun. I like when you can bully a streamer into basically decrying their own chat room in a way, even if they're just saying it to cover their bases, you know, for branding exercises, right? That's a win. That's a win, in my opinion. But, like, I was genuinely surprised that his chat was very right-wing. Very right-wing. Like, it seemed, and again, I make a distinction between right-wing and, like, Jimbo Dumbo people. Like, Jackson Hinkle is not necessarily on the same plane of existence as, like, you know, the CRT, you know, the fucking guy, the Virginia guy in that clip that I play, right? Where it's like, I don't have that much knowledge on it, right? It's a different kind of stupid, and there's a distinction, right? And so, you know, but there was, like, actual conservatives, like, actual right-wingers, actual right-wingers in his audience, probably like 20-30% of the messages I was seeing were those people, and they were saying and defending the same things that the the forced to vote Jimbo Dumbo people were saying, and that's the problem. That was explicitly, you know, what my message was the antithesis of. Is that if you've got people in the same thing, it's good if you make good on it. But, you know, it was pretty funny when he was like, I didn't see any of that. I mean, you had your chat on the camera, so it's on my stream anyway. And so, you know, what are you going to do? Like, it's what, like, if my chat room, I'm going to be honest, if my chat room says things that are, like, genuinely horrible, I'll make fun of them or ban them, depending on if, like, you know, if people spam, like, very bigoted garbage, I will probably ban them because they're not, like, producing any content. Like, DB Cooper, you know, pretty bigoted, pretty stupid, pretty dumb, but they don't spam, right? And they produce content in the form of me laughing at their messages, but they're not, like, spamming, you know, like tranny, like they're not like, you know, doing that shit. That shit's just annoying. Or they're not like, you know, like posting like memes or some shit, right? They're at least producing their own content and it's hilarious. Like this is spam, right? Like look at this garbage. And boom. I have no problem with that. But I enjoy the unique content. But anyway, thank y'all for sticking around. My show tomorrow will be at 10 a.m. So 12 hours from now, I will be doing my daily morning show, Above It All, folks. But yeah, again, so my point on that was that, like, I try to cultivate an audience that are made of good people. The people in my audience are good people. DM it to me or send it to me or tag me in it. Zeke. Because I'm high and I'm trying to like scroll and find your bullshit. And I'm not finding it. So just please help me. So I'll wait for that because that's a good way to end it. Oh hell yeah! All right. It doesn't have anything to do with the value. It's not a failure. It's not winning and losing and failures. Okay. You know, like Medicare for all failed, forcing the vote failed, ending wars failed. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't have been accomplished. That doesn't mean people fighting for those things weren't in the right. Yes, they failed.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that they shouldn't have been fighting.
But you're saying the action is a failure.
I said it was a failure. I didn't say they shouldn't have fought for those things.
Based on the action itself and not the results. The point of action is to get change. You don't just go out, do an action, and then go...
They didn't win. They didn't win.
What didn't they win?
The special's still up.
But they didn't ask for it to be removed.
They put forward in the demands.
They didn't ask for it to be removed, so it doesn't matter. You know, you put a lot of fluff in here, buddy. There's a lot of fluff in here.
It's a failure, Andrea. It's a failure. Force the vote. Sure, it was a failure.
There it is. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted.
Failure. Force the vote. Sure, was a failure.
That's the good stuff. That's the good stuff. That's going. Hey, that's going in the intro outro. That's going in the. That's the. There we go, folks. That's all I got. Oh yeah, remember when I was writing those little chat messages on screen? That was fun. That's all I got, folks. I win.
The vote, sure, was a failure. It's a failure. Force the vote, sure. Force the vote, sure, was a failure. Force the vote, sure, was a failure. Force the vote, sure, was a failure. The vote, sure, was a failure. Force the vote, sure, was a failure. It's a failure. Force the vote, sure, was a failure.